Sable's hands were already blistering when she realized the ceiling was about to collapse. Smoke choked her lungs, flames licked at her hair, and the wolf pup in her arms had stopped crying. She couldn't see the exit anymore. Couldn't remember which direction she'd come from. The heat was unbearable, searing through her clothes, and somewhere above her a beam groaned like it was begging to fall. This was how she was going to die, burned alive in an abandoned mill, clutching a stranger's animal, with no one to remember her name. But then the pup's heart beat against her chest, faint and rapid, and Sable thought, not yet. If you want to see how she survives, if you want to know why this fire was set deliberately and who wanted her dead for saving a life, stay until the end. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, it's free, and it helps these stories reach more people. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Sable didn't know the fire was set deliberately. She didn't know the wolf pup she pulled from the burning wreckage belonged to the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. And she definitely didn't know that using her last breath to save it would mark her forever, not just with scars, but with the attention of a king who'd sworn to destroy whoever dared attack his bloodline. All she knew was that the flames were spreading fast and something was crying inside. The abandoned mill on the edge of Thornwood had been empty for years. Rotting timbers and collapsed walls that served as shelter for foxes and the occasional drifter. Sable passed it every night on her way home from the healer's cottage where she worked, grinding herbs and mixing poultices for old Mirren. She never gave it more than a glance. But tonight, the sky above it glowed orange. Sable dropped her basket and ran. Her lungs burned before she even reached the structure. Smoke billowed thick and black against the stars. The heat hit her like a wall, pushing her back. But beneath the roar and crack of burning wood, she heard it, a high, desperate whimpering. "Hello!" she shouted, circling the mill. "Is someone in there?" The whimpering grew louder. Not human. Something smaller. She found a gap in the back wall, a section where the fire hadn't fully taken hold yet. The smoke was thinner here, visibility slightly better. Sable pulled her shawl over her nose and mouth and squeezed through. Inside was an inferno. Flames licked up the walls, devouring dry timber like kindling. The ceiling groaned ominously. She had minutes, maybe less. The sound came from the far corner, a pile of old grain sacks smoldering but not yet aflame. Sable dropped to her knees, shoving fabric aside with bare hands that screamed in protest. And there, huddled against the stone foundation, was a wolf pup. Not a dog. A wolf. Its fur was silver white, matted with ash, and its eyes, pale gold, almost amber, stared up at her with an intelligence that made her forget to breathe. "Okay," Sable whispered, reaching for it. "Okay, little one. I've got you." The pup didn't bite, didn't struggle. It simply collapsed into her arms like it had been waiting for her, trembling violently. Sable tucked it against her chest and turned toward the gap she'd entered through. It was gone. Flames had swallowed it completely. Panic clawed at her throat. The smoke was thicker now, choking, blinding. She couldn't see the walls, couldn't tell which direction led out. The ceiling groaned again, louder this time, and something crashed behind her, sending sparks showering across her back. Sable stumbled forward, one hand shielding the pup, the other stretched out in front of her. Her eyes streamed. Her lungs screamed for air that wasn't poison. The heat was unbearable, searing her skin even through her clothes. She hit a wall. Solid stone, not timber. The foundation. If she followed it, another crash. Pain exploded across her shoulder as something heavy struck her, driving her to her knees. She could smell her own hair burning. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up, or you both die here." Sable forced herself to her feet. The pup clutched tight against her chest. She followed the wall blindly, one agonizing step after another, until her hand found empty air. A window. Low and narrow, the wooden frame already consumed by flames. She didn't think. She threw herself through. The night air hit her like salvation. Sable rolled across the ground, smothering the embers on her clothes, and came to rest in the wet grass several feet from the burning mill. The pup was still in her arms, still breathing. She'd done it. She'd actually... The world tilted sideways. Her vision blurred, darkened at the edges. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The pain she'd been holding at bay came rushing in all at once. Her shoulder, her hands, her back, everything burning, everything wrong. The pup whimpered and licked her chin, but Sable couldn't respond, couldn't move, could barely keep her eyes open. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was a figure emerging from the tree line. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving toward her with inhuman speed. Then, nothing. Theron reached her just as she collapsed. He'd felt it the moment the fire started, a pull in his chest, sharp and urgent, drawing him toward Thornwood with a compulsion he couldn't explain. He'd been 3 miles away reviewing border patrols with Corin when the sensation hit him like a blade between the ribs. Cinder, his nephew, his brother's only son. The last piece of Fenrir that remained in this world. He'd shifted without a word to his beta and run. He'd covered the distance in minutes, following the invisible thread that connected him to his blood, and arrived to find the old mill engulfed in flames and a human woman crawling out of the inferno with Cinder pressed against her heart. Now she lay motionless in the grass, and Theron couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. She was small, painfully thin, with dark hair singed ragged and skin covered in soot and burns. Her clothes were ruined, her hands blistered, her shoulder clearly dislocated from something heavy striking her. By all rights, she should be dead. The fire had been hot enough to melt iron. He could feel the heat radiating from the ruins even now, but she'd survived. More than that, she'd saved Cinder. The pup squirmed free of her limp arms and pressed against Theron's leg, whimpering. He knelt and ran his hands over the silver fur, checking for injuries. Singed in places, but breathing steady. Alive. Because of her. Theron's gaze returned to the woman. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. She needed a healer immediately. The burns on her hands alone would leave permanent damage if not treated. Your Majesty. Corin emerged from the trees, having followed on foot. His expression shifted from concern to shock as he took in the scene. The burning mill. The unconscious woman. The pup now pressing against Theron's side. What happened? Someone set this fire. Theron's voice was ice. Deliberately. Cinder was inside. Corin's face hardened. An attack on your blood. On pack territory. Yes. Theron gathered the woman into his arms, careful of her injuries. She weighed almost nothing, light as kindling, fragile as ash. And this human pulled him out. Nearly killed herself doing it. Who is she? I don't know. Theron looked down at her face. Young, perhaps 22 or 23, with features that might have been pretty if they weren't slack with unconsciousness and pain. But I intend to find out. He turned toward the tree line, Cinder trotting at his heels. Send trackers to examine the mill once the fire dies. I want to know who did this, how they got onto our land, and why they targeted Cinder specifically. And the woman? She comes with me. Have Isella prepare the healing chambers. Corin hesitated. Your Majesty, bringing a human into Ashvale? She saved my nephew's life. Theron's tone left no room for argument. She will be given every care this pack can provide. Anyone who objects can take it up with me personally. He didn't wait for a response. The woman needed help now, and Theron had already wasted too much time. The fortress of Ashvale rose from the mountains like a crown of black stone, its towers catching the moonlight. Theron had grown up within these walls, had taken his father's throne within these walls, had buried his brother within these walls. It was home in all the ways that mattered, ancient, fierce, unforgiving to those who threatened what it protected. But tonight, for the first time, he was bringing someone inside who didn't belong. A human woman with burned hands and no name who had run into a fire for a wolf pup she'd never seen before. The gates opened at his approach. Warriors lined the courtyard, their expressions shifting from alertness to confusion as they saw what he carried. Summon Isella, he commanded, not slowing. Now! He took the stairs 2 at a time, moving through corridors he could navigate blind. The healing chambers were in the east wing, warm rooms lined with herbs and soft light, where Isella worked her particular brand of medicine. She was waiting when he arrived, silver hair braided back, her weathered face already assessing. Put her here. Isella gestured to the nearest bed. And tell me everything. Theron laid the woman down gently, watching as Isella began her examination. The healer's hands moved with practiced efficiency, cutting away ruined fabric, cataloging injuries. 2nd-degree burns on the hands and forearms. 3rd degree on the left shoulder where something struck her. Smoke damage to the lungs. Possible internal bleeding. Isela's voice was clinical, but her eyes were sharp. She shouldn't have survived this. She pulled Cinder from the fire. Isela's hands stilled. This human saved your nephew? Yes. Then she's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. The healer resumed her work. Either way, she's strong. Her body is fighting. I can work with that. Theron stepped back, giving Isela room, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. Something about this woman nagged at him. A familiarity he couldn't place, a pull in his chest that had nothing to do with Cinder. Do you know her? He asked. I've never seen her before, Isela said. She's not from the village. I know every soul in Thornwood. Then where did she come from? Isela paused, examining the woman's hands more closely. These calluses. She works with herbs, grinding, chopping, mixing. She sniffed the woman's ruined shawl. Comfrey, yarrow, feverfew. Her gaze lifted. She's a healer's apprentice, or something close to it. The cottage on the ridge, Theron said, realization dawning. Old Mirren. That would explain it. Mirren keeps to herself, takes in strays. This one must be recent. Isela returned to her work. I'll send word to Mirren once she's stable. For now, you should go. I'll stay. Your Majesty. I'll stay, Theron repeated. She risked her life for my family. I won't leave her to face the consequences alone. Isela studied him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded. As you wish. Sable woke to pain. It came in waves, sharp and searing where her hands lay bandaged at her sides, deep and throbbing in her shoulder, raw and scratching in her throat every time she breathed. She tried to open her eyes, but the light was too bright, forcing them shut again with a groan. Easy, a woman's voice, calm and authoritative. You're safe. Don't try to move yet. Sable forced her eyes open despite the pain. The room swam into focus slowly. Stone walls softened by tapestries. A fire crackling in a massive hearth. The smell of herbs. She recognized calendula, honey, something sharper beneath. A healer's chamber. But not Mirren's cottage. This was something else entirely. Where? Her voice came out as a croak. Where am I? Ashvale. The woman moved into view, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days? Sable's heart lurched. The pup, the wolf pup, is he alive and well, thanks to you? The woman pressed a cup to Sable's lips. Small sips. Your throat took damage from the smoke. The water was cool and sweet, easing the rawness. Sable drank gratefully, her mind spinning. Ashvale. She knew that name. Everyone in the outer territories knew that name. The seat of the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf pack in the north. I don't understand, she whispered. Why am I here? Because you saved Cinder's life. The woman set down the cup. I'm Isela, chief healer of Ashvale, and you've attracted considerable attention. Cinder, the pup you pulled from the fire, he's the nephew of our king, the son of his late brother. Sable's blood ran cold. She'd stumbled into something far bigger than a burning mill and an abandoned animal. I didn't know, she managed. I just heard him crying and I couldn't leave him there. No, Isela agreed, something like respect entering her voice. You couldn't. That's why you're still breathing. A knock interrupted them. Isela's expression shifted slightly. Come in. The door opened and Sable forgot how to breathe. The man who entered was tall, impossibly tall, filling the doorway with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to reshape the air around him. Dark hair fell past his collar, framing a face of sharp angles and barely contained power. He wore simple clothes, black trousers, a gray linen shirt open at the throat, but there was nothing simple about him. He moved like a predator, every step deliberate, controlled. But it was his eyes that held her, gray as winter clouds, pale and piercing, watching her with an intensity that made her want to look away and never look away all at once. You're awake. His voice was low, rough-edged. Sable remembered hearing it before, somewhere in the darkness between consciousness and oblivion. Hold on. Just hold on. Yes, she managed. He crossed the room to stand beside her bed, and she was acutely aware of how small she must look. Bandaged, broken, swallowed by blankets in a bed meant for someone far more important. What's your name? Sable. Sable. He repeated it slowly, like he was testing the weight of it. I'm Theron. She knew. Of course she knew. The Alpha King of Ashvale, ruler of the Northern Territories. The man they called the Iron Wolf. Stories of him had reached even Mirren's isolated cottage. Tales of a young king who'd taken the throne after his father's death, who ruled with ruthless efficiency, who had never taken a mate despite the council's pressure. Your Majesty, she whispered, struggling to rise. Don't. His hand caught her uninjured shoulder, gentle but firm, pressing her back into the pillows. You nearly died saving my nephew. You don't bow to me. His touch sent a jolt through her, something that went beyond physical contact, beyond explanation. Sable's breathing stuttered, and she saw his eyes widen slightly, felt his hand tighten for a fraction of a second before he withdrew. The fire, he said, his voice rougher than before. Tell me what you saw. Sable gathered her scattered thoughts. I was walking home from Mirren's cottage. I saw the smoke, heard something crying inside. I didn't think. I just went in. You didn't think. His jaw tightened. You ran into a burning building without thinking. There was something alive in there. You could have died. So could he. Sable met his gaze, refusing to look away despite the intensity burning there. I couldn't just watch. A shadow crossed Theron's features. Frustration, admiration, something deeper she couldn't name. He turned to Isella. Leave us. The healer raised an eyebrow but gathered her supplies without argument. The door clicked shut behind her. Theron pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. This close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The Alpha King looked worn thin. The fire was set deliberately, he said quietly. Someone put cinder in that mill and lit it on fire, knowing he couldn't escape. Sable's stomach dropped. Someone tried to murder him? Yes. A pup barely 6 months old. His hands clenched. My brother's son. The only family I have left. Why would anyone? That's what I need to find out. Theron's eyes held hers. You were the only person there. You might have seen something, heard something, even if you don't realize it. Sable tried to think back, but the memories were fragmented. Smoke and heat and desperate scrambling. I didn't see anyone. The mill was already burning when I arrived. I heard him crying and I couldn't leave him. Nothing else? No scent? No tracks? No sound of someone fleeing? She shook her head, then winced as her shoulder protested. I'm sorry. I wish I could help. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, the tension in his posture eased. You've already helped more than you know. I just did what anyone would do. No. His voice was firm. You did what most people wouldn't dream of doing. You ran into a fire for a creature you'd never met, knowing you might not come out. He paused. That's not ordinary. Sable looked down at her bandaged hands. The burns would scar. She knew that much about healing. She'd carry marks from that night for the rest of her life. Isella says you work for Mirren, Theron continued. The hedge witch on the ridge. She's not a witch. She's a healer. The distinction is lost on most. Something almost like a smile tugged at his mouth. How long have you been with her? 3 years. She found me on the road after... Sable stopped. She didn't talk about that. Not to anyone. After what? She met his eyes, saw the genuine curiosity there, and felt something dangerous stir in her chest. This man was the Alpha King. He had no business looking at her like she mattered, like her story was worth hearing. After my village burned, she said flatly. Rogues came through. Killed everyone. I was the only survivor. Theron went very still. I was 14. Mirren found me half dead in a ditch 2 days later. Sable forced the words out mechanically. She took me in, taught me everything she knows. I've been with her ever since. The silence stretched. When Theron finally spoke, his voice was rough. I'm sorry. It was 8 years ago. That doesn't make it easier. No, it didn't, but she'd learned to live with it. The nightmares, the fear, the way the smell of smoke still made her hands shake. The fire at the mill, she said slowly. Do you think it's connected? To what happened to my village? I don't know yet. Theron's expression hardened. But I intend to find out. He stood, and she felt the loss of his proximity like a physical thing. You'll stay here until you're healed, he said. I won't hear arguments about it. Mirren has been informed, and she agrees you're in no condition to travel. Stay here? In Ashvale? In the castle? Under my protection. His eyes held hers with fierce intensity. Someone tried to kill my nephew, and you're the only witness. Until I know who's responsible and why, you're not safe out there. Sable wanted to argue. She'd spent 8 years building a life that was small and quiet and invisible. The kind of life where no one noticed her, where danger passed her by. Coming to the attention of the Alpha King was the opposite of everything she'd worked for. But the fire had changed that. She couldn't undo it now. How long? She asked. As long as it takes. That's not an answer. No, Theron agreed, but it's all I have. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. Cinder has been asking for you. When you're strong enough, I'd like you to see him. The pup has been asking for me? His expression softened. He hasn't left the corridor outside this room in 2 days. He knows you saved him. Wolves don't forget that kind of debt. He left before she could respond, the door closing quietly behind him. Sable lay in the silence, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. 2 days ago, she'd been grinding herbs in Mirren's cottage, invisible and unremarkable. Now she was in the Alpha King's castle, under his protection, entangled in a conspiracy she didn't understand. And something about the way Theron had touched her shoulder, the spark that had passed between them, nagged at the edges of her consciousness. Something that felt like recognition, something that felt like fate. She pushed the thought away. She didn't believe in fate. Fate was for people whose villages hadn't burned, whose families hadn't died, whose lives hadn't taught them that the world was cruel and random and owed you nothing. But as sleep pulled her under again, she could have sworn she heard the soft padding of paws outside her door, and felt for the first time in 8 years something that might have been hope. A week passed before Sable could walk without assistance. The burns on her hands were healing faster than Isella expected, pink and tender, but no longer weeping. Her shoulder had been reset and bound, the deep tissue damage responding to Isella's poultices with remarkable speed. Even her lungs, raw from smoke, had cleared enough that breathing no longer felt like swallowing glass. You heal like one of us, Isella remarked one morning, unwrapping Sable's bandages with clinical precision. I've never seen a human recover this quickly from third-degree burns. Sable didn't have an explanation. She'd always healed fast, cuts closing overnight, bruises fading within days. Mirren had noticed it too, had called it a gift and left it at that. Whatever the reason, Sable had learned not to question it. Some things simply were. Can I see him today? She asked. Cinder? Isella's expression softened. He's been waiting outside your door every morning. I think he'd be heartbroken if you didn't. The corridor beyond the healing chambers was wider than Sable expected, lined with windows that let in pale mountain light. And there, curled against the wall like he'd taken root, was Cinder. He lifted his head the moment she appeared, those amber eyes fixing on her with startling intensity. Then he was on his feet, bounding toward her, his silver-white fur gleaming. Sable knelt carefully, mindful of her shoulder, and Cinder pressed his head against her chest. A low whine escaped him, relief and recognition and something that felt almost like gratitude. Hey, she whispered, running her fingers through his fur. I'm okay. We're both okay. Cinder's tail wagged, and he licked her chin with such enthusiasm that she laughed despite everything. He hasn't left this corridor since you arrived. Sable looked up to find Theron watching from several feet away, his expression unreadable. He was dressed more formally today, dark leather and silver clasps, but his eyes held the same weary intensity she'd seen before. He's a loyal pup, she said. He's bonded to you. Theron moved closer, his gaze shifting between her and Cinder. It happens sometimes when a wolf recognizes someone who saved their life. The connection goes deep. I didn't mean for that to happen. I know. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But it did. And now he won't leave your side. Isela says he's barely eaten, barely slept. He was waiting for you to wake up. Sable looked down at Cinder, who was now pressed against her legs, his small body trembling slightly. He's just a pup. He shouldn't have to carry this kind of weight. No, Theron agreed quietly. He shouldn't. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then Theron extended his hand. Come, there's something I need to show you. He led her through corridors that grew increasingly grand, vaulted ceilings carved with wolf imagery, tapestries depicting hunts and battles, windows overlooking courtyards where warriors trained with brutal efficiency. Ashvale was beautiful in the way mountains were beautiful, vast, unforgiving, demanding respect. Sable felt insignificant within its walls. A small human woman with burned hands and no place in this world of power and politics. But Cinder trotted beside her like she belonged, and somehow that made it easier. They stopped before a heavy oak door reinforced with iron bands. Theron pushed it open to reveal a study lined with maps and correspondence, a massive desk dominating the center. This was my brother's office, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Fenrir handled intelligence, threats to the pack, movements of enemy forces, anything that might destabilize our borders. Cinder's father? Yes. Theron crossed to the desk, lifting a stack of documents. Before he died, he was investigating something, a pattern he'd noticed in attacks on outer villages. Sable's pulse kicked. What kind of pattern? Rogues hitting settlements on the edges of pack territory, burning everything, leaving no survivors. Theron's eyes met hers. Sound familiar? The room tilted. Sable gripped the edge of a chair, steadying herself. My village. You think it's connected? I think whoever ordered the attack on Cinder has been operating for years, destabilizing the region, weakening my borders, making me look like a king who can't protect his people. Theron set down the documents. And I think your village was one of their targets. Why? We were nothing. Farmers and fishermen. We had nothing anyone would want. You had location. Theron pulled a map from the stack, spreading it across the desk. Your village sat on a supply route between Ashvale and the Eastern Territories. Taking it out disrupted trade for months. Sable stared at the map, at the small dot that represented everything she'd lost. You're saying my family died for logistics? I'm saying they died because someone is waging a shadow war against this pack, and they don't care who gets caught in the crossfire. Cinder whined softly, pressing against her legs. Sable reached down automatically, her fingers finding his fur. The contact grounded her, kept her from spiraling into grief that never quite went away. Who? She asked. Who's doing this? That's what Fenrir was trying to find out. Theron's jaw tightened. He got close, too close. 3 months ago, he was killed in what looked like a hunting accident. His body was found at the bottom of a ravine. You don't think it was an accident? I know it wasn't. His voice was ice. My brother was the best tracker in the Northern Territories. He didn't fall. He was pushed. Sable absorbed this, her mind racing. And now someone tried to kill his son. Whoever murdered Fenrir wants his entire bloodline erased. Cinder is the last loose end. Theron looked at the pup with fierce protectiveness. They failed, because of you. I was just in the right place at the right time. Were you? Theron studied her with uncomfortable intensity. You survived a fire that should have killed you. You healed from burns that should have taken months. And you happened to be walking past that mill at the exact moment Cinder needed saving. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet. He moved closer, and she caught his scent. Pine and wood smoke and something wilder beneath. But I've learned not to believe in coincidence. A knock interrupted them. Corin entered, his expression grim. Your Majesty, we found something at the mill site. Theron's posture shifted, predatory alertness replacing thoughtful contemplation. Show me. The object was small. A silver clasp, half melted but still recognizable. Corin had found it buried in the ash near where Cinder had been trapped. Theron held it up to the light, and Sable watched his composure slip, the careful control giving way to reveal something raw beneath. You recognize it, she said. It's a council insignia. His voice was dangerously quiet. Only 7 people in this territory have the right to wear this mark. Someone from your own council tried to kill Cinder. Theron didn't answer immediately. He crossed to a cabinet, pulling out a wooden box. Inside, arranged on velvet, were 7 identical clasps, each bearing the same symbol, each representing a seat of power in his inner circle. He compared the melted clasp to the others, his jaw tight. "Varon," he said finally. "Lord Varon's insignia." "Who is Lord Varon?" "My father's oldest ally. He served this pack for 30 years. He held me when I was a child, swore loyalty on my father's grave." Theron's hand clenched around the clasp. "I've had a traitor in my council this entire time." "Maybe someone stole it," Sable said, breaking the silence that had settled like frost over the study. "Planted it to frame him." Theron set the clasp down with deliberate care, his knuckles white against the dark wood. "Maybe, but I don't believe in convenient explanations anymore." He turned to Corin. "Where's Varon now?" "His estate. He left the castle 2 days ago, claiming illness. Convenient timing." Theron's voice could have cut glass. "I want eyes on him, discreetly. Don't let him know he's being watched. And if he runs, then we have our answer." Corin nodded and departed, leaving Sable alone with Theron and the weight of betrayal hanging between them. For a long moment, Theron just stood there, staring at the insignia like it had personally wounded him. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing controlled, but she could see the cracks forming in his composure. "I'm sorry," Sable said quietly. "For what?" "For all of it. Your brother, the betrayal, having to suspect people you trusted." He looked at her then, and the vulnerability in his expression squeezed something behind her ribs. "Fenrir would have known what to do," he said, his voice rough. "He had instincts for this kind of thing. Could smell a lie from across a room, could read people like I read maps." He swallowed hard. "I'm just trying not to destroy everything he built." "You're doing more than that." Sable moved closer, drawn by an impulse she didn't fully understand. "You're protecting your people, hunting down threats, taking care of Cinder. That's not destruction. That's leadership." "Is it?" Theron's laugh was bitter. "I've spent 3 years chasing shadows while my enemies grew stronger. My brother is dead. My nephew was nearly murdered, and I didn't see any of it coming. You see it now. Too late." Not too late for Cinder. She gestured to the pup, who had curled up by the fire, watching them with those golden eyes. "Not too late for whatever comes next." Theron studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You're remarkably calm for someone who just learned she's caught in the middle of a conspiracy." "I learned a long time ago that panic doesn't change anything." Sable held his gaze. "You survive or you don't. Falling apart is a luxury I've never been able to afford." His expression softened, recognition perhaps, or respect. "Fenrir would have liked you. I wish I could have met him." "So do I." Theron turned back to the window, his shoulders rigid again. He would have figured this out by now. Would have known exactly which threads to pull, which allies to trust. Sable hesitated, then said, "Maybe I can help." He looked at her sharply. "How?" "I don't know yet, but I've spent 8 years surviving on instinct, reading people, knowing when something's wrong before I can explain why." She took a breath. "Mirren calls it a gift. Maybe it's time I used it for something that matters. That could be dangerous. More dangerous than being hunted by someone who already tried to kill me once?" She raised an eyebrow. "I was at that fire, Theron. Whoever did this knows I survived, knows I might have seen something. I'm already a target." His jaw worked, but he didn't argue. "What do you propose?" "Let me observe. The council, the servants, anyone who had access to information about Cinder's location. Sometimes people reveal more than they realize when they think no one important is watching." She stepped closer. "I owe Cinder my life as much as he owes me his. Let me help find who did this." Theron was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. "Fine. But if there's any sign of danger, any hint that you've been made as more than a guest, you tell me immediately. No heroics." "Agreed." "I mean it, Sable." He closed the distance between them, and suddenly she was aware of how close he was, the heat radiating from his body, the way his presence seemed to fill the room. I won't lose anyone else. Not to Varen. Not to this conspiracy. Not to anything. Her breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough. His voice dropped low. I know you ran into a fire for a stranger. I know you've survived things that would break most people. I know you look at Cinder like he matters, like his life has value beyond what he represents politically. He raised his hand, hesitated, then let it fall. That's enough to know you're worth protecting. The air between them crackled with something unnamed. Sable felt it, that same spark from when he touched her shoulder days ago, like her body knew something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. What is this? She whispered. This feeling every time you're close. I don't know, but the roughness in his voice suggested he felt it too. I've never experienced anything like it. Before either could say more, Corin burst through the door. Your Majesty, Varen's estate is empty. He's gone, and he's taken half his household guard with him. The words hit like cold water. Theron's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerability vanishing behind a mask of controlled fury. How long? Can't be more than a few hours. The hearth was still warm. Send trackers. I want every road out of the territory watched. Theron's voice was steel. He won't get far, but he did. The hunt for Varen consumed the next 3 days. Trackers fanned across the territory, following trails that went cold, pursuing rumors that led nowhere. The traitor had planned his escape well. Provisions cached along hidden routes, contacts in villages beyond pack borders, a network of loyalists Theron hadn't known existed. Sable watched from the edges, feeling useless. Her plan to observe the castle's occupants had been postponed indefinitely. Theron refused to let her move freely, while Varen was unaccounted for. He knows you survived, Theron had said, his expression brooking no argument. If he's smart, and he is, he'll try to eliminate loose ends. That means you. So she waited, and healed, and spent hours with Cinder, who seemed to sense her frustration. The pup followed her everywhere, to meals in the Great Hall where warriors watched her with curious eyes, to the library where she searched Fenrir's notes for anything useful, to the battlements where she stood at night staring at stars she'd once watched from her village. On the third night, Theron found her there. You should be sleeping, he said, joining her at the wall. So should you. He didn't argue, just stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body against the mountain cold. Cinder was asleep in her chambers, tired from a day of following her up and down stairs. We lost his trail near the eastern border, Theron said quietly. He's gone to ground somewhere. Could be weeks before we find him. And in the meantime? In the meantime, I keep you safe and hope he makes a mistake. Sable turned to look at him. The moonlight silvered his features, softening the harsh lines, making him look younger, tired, human. You can't protect everyone, you know, she said gently. I can try. At what cost? You haven't slept in days. Corin says you've barely eaten. You're running yourself into the ground. Corin talks too much. Corin is worried about you. She hesitated, then added, So am I. Theron looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the mask fall away. The iron control that held him together always wavered. I keep thinking about Fenrir, he said, his voice rough. About the last conversation we had. He wanted to tell me something about his investigation, but I was busy. Council meetings, border disputes, all the things that seemed important at the time. He swallowed hard. I told him we'd talk later, and then there was no later. That's not your fault, isn't it? His laugh was hollow. I'm the Alpha King. Everything that happens in this territory is my responsibility. Every failure, every death, every threat I should have seen coming. That's an impossible standard. It's the only standard that matters. He gripped the stone wall, knuckles white. If I'd listened to Fenrir, maybe he'd still be alive. If I'd paid more attention to Varen, maybe Cinder would never have been in danger. If I'd... Stop. Sable put her hand on his arm, felt the muscle tense beneath her touch. Stop torturing yourself with what-ifs. They don't change anything. They're all I have. No. She turned him to face her, her hand still on his arm. You have a pack that would die for you. You have a nephew who needs you. You have people working day and night to find Varen and bring him to justice. She paused. You have me. Theron went very still. Sable, I know I'm just a human A stranger you found half dead outside a burning building. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. And I'm telling you that carrying this alone will kill you faster than any traitor." His hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his arm. The touch sent heat through her, warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. She saw his pupils dilate, heard his breathing change. "That feeling you asked about?" he said quietly. "The one that happens when we're close?" "Yes. I think I know what it is." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "But if I'm right, it changes everything, and I don't want to pressure you, not when you're still healing, not when your whole life has been upended because of my family. Tell me anyway." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Among my kind, there's a bond that forms between mates. It's rare. Most wolves choose their partners based on politics or compatibility. But sometimes, very rarely, the bond chooses for you." His eyes searched hers. "It feels like recognition, like your soul has been waiting for someone, and suddenly there they are." Sable's pulse quickened. "You're saying I'm saying it might be possible, that the pull between us, the way I can't stop thinking about you, the way my wolf has been restless since the moment I saw you." He broke off, seeming to struggle for control. "I've never felt this before. Never wanted anyone the way I want you." She should pull away, should remind him that she was nobody, a healer's apprentice with a dead family and a knack for survival, that she had no place in his world, no right to stand beside an alpha king. Instead, she stepped closer. "I feel it too," she admitted. "I've been trying to ignore it, telling myself it's just proximity, just stress, just my mind playing tricks. But every time you walk into a room, every time you look at me—" She shook her head. "It's like my whole body knows something my brain hasn't figured out yet." Theron's hand rose to cup her cheek, gentle despite its strength. "I won't rush you. Whatever this is, whatever it might become, you have a choice. You'll always have a choice." "What if I'm making it now?" The air left his lungs. "Sable." She rose on her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, he was frozen. Then his arms came around her, pulling her against him, and he kissed her back with a desperation that stole her breath. His lips were warm, demanding, tasting of need too long denied. One hand cradled her jaw while the other pressed against the small of her back, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron pressed his forehead to hers. "I should be noble about this," he murmured. "Should give you time, give you space, make sure you know what you're getting into. And instead," his laugh was shaky, "instead I'm standing here wondering how fast I can get the council to approve a mating ceremony." Sable laughed despite herself. "Maybe we should focus on catching Varen first." Probably wise, but he didn't let go of her. "Tell me this is real," he said. "Tell me I'm not imagining it." "It's real." She pressed her hand over his heart, felt it pounding beneath her palm. "I don't understand it, and it terrifies me, but it's real." "Then stay." His voice cracked slightly. "Not as a guest, not as a witness. Stay because you want to stay, and let me show you what this could be." She thought about the life she'd built. Quiet, invisible, safe. The cottage with Mirren, the routine of herbs and healing, the careful walls she'd constructed around her heart. Then she thought about the fire, about Cinder's trusting eyes, about this man who carried a kingdom on his shoulders and still looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "Ask me again," she said, "when Varen is caught and Cinder is safe. Ask me then, and I'll give you a real answer. That's not a no." "No," she agreed. "It's not." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a plea. And when they finally returned to the castle, his hand warm in hers, Sable let herself imagine a future she'd never dared want, which made it all the more devastating when Corrin met them at the door, his face ashen. "Your Majesty, we intercepted a message, from Varen to his contacts in the east." Theron's posture went rigid. "And?" Corrin's gaze flickered to Sable, then back to his king. "He's not working alone. He's been taking orders from someone else. Someone inside the castle walls." The words hit like ice water. Someone inside. Another traitor, still among them, watching everything, watching her. "Who?" Theron demanded. "We don't know yet. But the message mentioned the human woman. Corin's expression was grim. They want her dead, Your Majesty, and they want it done before the next full moon. Sable felt the blood drain from her face. The full moon was in 4 days. The castle that had begun to feel like sanctuary now felt like a cage. Every servant who passed her in the corridors, every guard who stood watch outside her door, every council member who glanced her way during meals, any of them could be the second traitor. Any of them could be waiting for the right moment to strike. Theron had tripled her security, assigning his most trusted warriors to shadow her movements. Corin himself took the night watch, sleeping outside her chambers with a sword across his knees. Cinder refused to leave her side, his small body pressed against her legs whenever she sat, his golden gaze tracking every person who came near. But none of it felt like enough. "We need to draw them out," Sable said on the second night, pacing Theron's study while he reviewed intercepted messages. "Waiting for them to make a move gives them the advantage." "And what do you suggest? Using yourself as bait?" His voice was sharp. "Absolutely not. It might be our only option. It's not an option at all." He stood, crossing to her, his hands catching her shoulders. "I won't risk you, not for information, not for strategy, not for anything." "Theron, no." The word was absolute. "I've already lost my brother. I nearly lost Cinder. I will not stand by and watch you walk into danger. And if they succeed anyway, if they find a way past your guards, past Corin, past all of it, at least if we control the situation, we're not having this conversation." "Yes, we are." She pulled free of his grip, frustration boiling over. "I'm not a porcelain doll, Theron. I survived a fire that should have killed me. I survived rogues burning my village to the ground. I've been surviving my whole life, and I won't stop now just because you're afraid of losing me." The words hung between them, sharp and unavoidable. Theron's jaw worked. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "You're right. I am afraid." He looked away, his guard dropping. "I've spent 3 years being the Alpha King, making decisions that cost lives, carrying weight that would crush most men. I thought I understood fear." His eyes returned to hers. "I didn't, not until you." Sable's anger faltered. "Theron, when I saw you outside that mill, barely breathing, covered in burns," he shook his head. "Something broke inside me, something I didn't know could break. And every moment since, every hour you've been in this castle, all I can think about is how to keep you safe, how to make sure I never have to feel that again." She stepped closer, her hand finding his. "I'm not asking you to let me face this alone. I'm asking you to trust me, to let me be part of the solution instead of just the problem everyone's trying to protect." His fingers tightened around hers. "If something happened to you, then you'd survive it. The same way you survived losing Fenrir, the same way I survived losing everyone I loved." She raised their joined hands, pressing them against her heart. "But I don't plan on dying. I plan on helping you catch whoever's doing this. And then I plan on figuring out what this thing between us actually means." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You're infuriatingly stubborn. I learned from the best. Mirren doesn't take no for an answer either." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "Fine, we'll discuss options. But," he added before she could respond, "any plan that puts you in direct danger gets vetoed. Non-negotiable." "Agreed." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She felt his heartbeat, rapid despite his controlled exterior, and understood what it cost him to compromise. 3 years, he whispered against her temple. "I've been alone for 3 years, carrying this kingdom, trusting no one completely. And then you appear out of nowhere, smelling like smoke and stubbornness, and suddenly I can't imagine doing any of it without you." "You won't have to." She tilted her head back to look at him. "We're going to figure this out. Together." He kissed her forehead, soft and lingering. Together. The trap was Sable's idea. If the traitor wanted her dead before the full moon, they would need to act soon. And they would need access. So far, Theron's security had made that impossible. But what if there was a gap? A moment of vulnerability that seemed accidental? "The healing gardens," Sable suggested during their strategy session. "Isella wants me to help harvest moon petal blossoms. It's delicate work, has to be done at twilight, and the gardens are partially exposed to anyone watching from the upper corridors." Corin frowned. "You'd be visible, vulnerable. Exactly. But you'd have warriors hidden in the surrounding buildings, watching for anyone who takes the bait. Theron's expression was granite. I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to admit it could work. The argument lasted another hour, but in the end, strategy won over fear. They set the trap for the third evening, one day before the full moon deadline. Sable walked into the healing gardens at twilight, her movements deliberately casual. Isella had agreed to the plan reluctantly, providing cover by actually teaching Sable to harvest the delicate silver blossoms. The work required focus. The petals bruised easily and lost potency if handled roughly. But beneath her concentration, Sable's senses were hyper-aware. Every rustle of leaves, every shift of shadow, every distant footstep echoed through her consciousness. Cinder had been left inside, despite his protests. His presence would signal that something was wrong. The pup never left her side anymore. His absence was part of the deception. An hour passed, then two. The moon rose, casting silver light across the garden, and Sable began to wonder if the traitor had seen through their plan. Then she heard it, a soft footfall behind her, too deliberate to be accidental. She didn't turn, kept her hands moving among the blossoms, her breathing steady. You're harder to kill than expected. The voice was female, cold, familiar. The fire should have finished you. Varen swore it would. Sable's blood chilled. She knew that voice. Slowly, she turned. Isella stood at the garden's edge, a knife gleaming in her hand. The healer who had tended her wounds, who had watched over her recovery, who had seemed so kind, her face was now a mask of contempt. You, Sable breathed. Me. Isella moved closer, the blade catching moonlight. Did you really think Varen acted alone? That a man who couldn't organize a council meeting managed to evade Theron's trackers for 3 days? You helped him escape. I've been helping him for years, feeding him information, covering his tracks, making sure no one looked too closely at the accidents that kept happening to Fenrir's investigation. Her smile was cruel. The Alpha King trusts his healer. Never occurs to him that the woman binding his wounds might be the one causing them. Sable's mind raced. The hidden warriors should be moving by now, should have heard the confession. She just needed to keep Isella talking. Why? What did Theron ever do to you? Theron? Isella laughed bitterly. This isn't about Theron. This is about what his father did to my family, what his entire bloodline has taken from mine for 3 generations. I don't understand. No, you wouldn't. You're human. You don't know our history. Isella's grip tightened on the knife. My grandmother was supposed to be Alpha Queen. She was promised to Theron's grandfather, the bond forming between them. But then he met another woman, a nobody from a lesser pack. And suddenly the promise meant nothing. My grandmother was cast aside, humiliated, left to watch another woman take everything that should have been hers. That was generations ago. Pain doesn't forget. It just waits. Isella's eyes glittered. Varen's family suffered similar slights. We found each other, recognized the same hunger for justice, and we decided that if we couldn't have the throne, we'd destroy everyone who sat on it. Including a 6-month-old pup? With you gone and Theron unmated, Cinder was the last hope for continuing the bloodline. He had to die. Isella raised the knife. You're insane. I'm patient. Isella raised the knife higher. Just like you have to die. You've gotten too close to Theron, wormed your way into his heart. He might actually mate you. Continue the line. We can't allow that. She lunged. Sable dove sideways, her healer's training giving her just enough warning to read the movement. The blade sliced through air where her throat had been. And then warriors were pouring from the buildings, Corin leading the charge, his sword drawn, his face thunderous. Isella spun, realizing the trap too late. She tried to run, but Corin was faster, tackling her to the ground with brutal efficiency. The knife skittered across stone, out of reach. Hold her, Theron's voice commanded, and Sable looked up to see him emerging from the shadows, his expression murderous. He crossed to Sable first, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. I'm fine, she said, her voice shakier than she wanted. She didn't touch me. She almost did. His arms came around her, crushing her against his chest. She almost, but she didn't. Sable held on to him, feeling his heartbeat race beneath her cheek. The plan worked. Behind them, Isella was being hauled to her feet, her hands bound, her face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything?" she spat. "Varen is still out there. Others share our cause. You can't kill an idea, Theron. You can't." "Gag her," Theron said coldly, not looking away from Sable. "I'll deal with her later." Corrin complied, and Isella's threats dissolved into muffled fury as she was dragged away. In the sudden silence, Sable let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "It's over." "Not yet." Theron's voice was grim. "Varen is still free, and Isella mentioned others, but the immediate threat—" He cupped her face in his hands. "You're safe. That's what matters right now." She leaned into his touch, weariness crashing over her. "What happens now?" "Now we make her talk, find out who else is involved, where Varen is hiding, how deep this conspiracy goes." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And then we end it, permanently." Isella broke faster than expected. Faced with execution for treason, she traded information for exile. Names, locations, the full scope of the conspiracy. Varen had a dozen supporters scattered across the territory, most in positions of minor power, all united by old grievances and new ambition. But the most valuable piece came last. "There's a meeting," Isella said, her voice hollow with defeat. "Tomorrow night at the old fortress ruins near Blackrock Pass. Varen is gathering his remaining loyalists for a final strike. They're planning to attack the castle during the full moon celebration, when security is focused outward." Theron stood motionless, absorbing this. The full moon celebration was a sacred tradition. The entire pack gathered in the Great Hall, leaving the castle's defenses spread thin. "How many?" Corrin asked. 30, maybe 40? Enough to breach the walls if they strike at the right moment." "And Varen will be at this meeting?" "He's leading it. He thinks he's won. Thinks Isella is still loyal, still feeding him information." Her laugh was bitter. "He doesn't know I've already lost everything." Theron turned to Corrin. "Assemble the War Council. We move on Blackrock Pass tonight." The ride to the ruins took 4 hours through treacherous mountain terrain. Sable had insisted on coming over Theron's furious objections, arguing that her presence might draw out any hesitant conspirators. If Varen's people saw her alive, saw that their assassination attempts had failed, it might shake their confidence. Privately, she simply couldn't bear to wait at the castle, not knowing if Theron would return. They approached the ruins under cover of darkness, 24 of Theron's most elite warriors moving silent as shadows through the trees. The old fortress loomed against the stars, half collapsed but still imposing, torchlight flickering in what remained of the great hall. 32 heat signatures inside, but, whispered Bren, the pack's best scout. Heavily armed, Varen is at the center, addressing them. Theron's jaw tightened. Surround the perimeter. No one escapes. The warriors dispersed, melting into the darkness. Sable stayed close to Theron, Cinder pressed against her legs. The pup had refused to be left behind, and in the end, Theron had relented. Whatever bond connected them seemed to grant Cinder an uncanny sense for danger. They waited until Corrin's signal, a low whistle that echoed off stone. Then Theron stepped into the torchlight, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Varen." The conspirators spun, weapons drawn, faces registering shock. Varen stood at the hall's center, older than Sable had expected, with silver-streaked hair and cold blue eyes that showed no fear. "Theron." He smiled as if greeting an old friend. "I wondered when you'd find us." "It's over. Your people are surrounded. Isella has confessed everything." A muscle twitched in Varen's jaw, rage quickly suppressed. "Isella was always weak. I should have known she'd break. Surrender now, and I'll grant quick deaths to your followers. Continue this, and I'll make examples of every one of them." "Quick deaths?" Varen laughed. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about winning or losing. This is about legacy. Your bloodline has ruled for 5 generations, crushing anyone who threatened your power. We're simply returning the favor. My bloodline protected this territory, built alliances, kept the peace. Your bloodline murdered my grandfather for speaking truth to power, exiled my father for demanding justice, took everything from my family and called it maintaining order." Varen's voice hardened. "I've waited 40 years for this moment. I won't surrender it now." He moved faster than a man his age should be able to move, shifting forms mid-stride, becoming a massive gray wolf that launched itself at Theron with killing intent. But Theron was faster. His own shift was explosive, bones reforming, muscles expanding until a black wolf twice Varen's size met the attack head-on. They collided with a force that shook the stones, fangs and claws tearing, growls echoing through the ruins. Around them, chaos erupted. Theron's warriors engaged the conspirators, steel clashing against steel, wolves fighting in brutal melee. Sable pressed herself against a pillar, Cinder growling at her feet, watching the battle with horror and fascination. Theron was magnificent. Even wounded, even running on fumes from days without sleep, he fought with a ferocity that made Varen look slow by comparison. Blood streaked his black fur, but he kept pressing forward, driving the older wolf back, refusing to give ground. Then Varen stumbled. His hind leg buckled, old injury perhaps, or simple age, and Theron was on him, jaws closing around his throat, pinning him to the ground. For a long moment, nothing moved. The remaining conspirators, seeing their leader defeated, dropped their weapons. Theron's warriors closed in, binding hands, confiscating blades. Theron shifted back to human form, one hand still pressed against Varen's throat, his chest heaving. Yield! Varen also shifted back, blood running from wounds that would have killed a lesser wolf. He laughed wetly. You think this ends anything? There will always be others, always someone willing to fight against your family's tyranny. Maybe. Theron's voice was ice. But they'll do it without you. He looked at Corin. Take him. He stands trial at dawn. The trial was brief. Evidence of Varen's crimes stretched back decades. Fenrir's murder, Cinder's attempted assassination, the attack on Sable's village 8 years ago. That last revelation hit her like a physical blow. The rogues who had burned her home, killed her family, hadn't been random raiders. They'd been Varen's agents, eliminating a village that sat on a strategic supply route. Her parents had died because of logistics, because of a man's 40-year grudge against a family they'd never met. Sable sat in the gallery, Cinder in her lap, her hands trembling as the full weight of it settled over her. 8 years of nightmares, 8 years of wondering why. And now she knew, and the knowledge was both devastating and strangely freeing. There had been a reason, even if it was monstrous. She hadn't been forgotten by the universe. She'd been caught in someone else's war. The council found Varen guilty on all counts, pronounced the sentence death by execution to be carried out immediately. Sable didn't attend. She'd seen enough death to last several lifetimes. Instead, she walked to the healing gardens. Empty now. Isella's betrayal still raw, and sat among the moon petal blossoms she'd been harvesting when everything changed. Cinder curled against her side, his warmth the comfort she hadn't known she needed. It's strange, she said quietly, knowing the pup couldn't understand but needing to voice it anyway. I spent 8 years wondering why. Why my village? Why my family? Why I survived when everyone else died? And now I know. And it doesn't change anything. They're still gone. Cinder whined softly, pressing closer. But you're here, she continued. And Theron is here, and maybe that's enough. Maybe surviving means finding new reasons to keep going, even when the old ones are gone. Footsteps approached. Sable didn't need to look to know who it was. She felt his presence like warmth on her skin, that bond humming between them. Theron sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. He said nothing for a long moment, just breathed with her, sharing the silence. It's done, he said finally. Varen is dead. His conspirators will face trial over the coming weeks. The threat is ended. Is it ever really ended? No. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. But we've bought peace, time to rebuild, to strengthen what was weakened, time to live instead of just survive. Sable turned to look at him. He was drained, dark circles under his eyes, new scars crossing old ones, the weight of leadership heavier than ever. But beneath the weariness, she saw something else. Hope. You promised to ask me something, she said quietly, after Varen was caught, after Cinder was safe. His breathing stuttered. I remember. Well, she squeezed his hand. Cinder is safe. Varen is caught. It's after. Theron turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. In the moonlight, his gray eyes were luminous, vulnerable in a way she suspected few people ever saw. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as a guest, not as a witness, not as someone under my protection. Stay because you want to. Stay and be my mate, my partner, my queen." His voice roughened. "Stay and let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Sable felt tears prick her eyes. She thought about the life she'd been living. Quiet, invisible, safe. A life built on fear, on the assumption that wanting more only led to losing more. Then she thought about the fire, about running into flames for a stranger, about the way Theron looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. "Yes," she whispered. Joy transformed his face. Relief, wonder, something fierce and bright. "Yes? Yes to staying. Yes to being your mate." She laughed through her tears. Yes to all of it. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. His arms came around her, lifting her off the ground, spinning her in a circle while Cinder barked with excitement at their feet. When he set her down, both of them breathless and laughing, she pressed her forehead to his chest. "I should warn you," she murmured. "I have no idea how to be a queen. Neither did my mother when she started. You'll learn." He tilted her chin up. "And I'll be beside you every step. We figure it out together, remember?" "Together," she agreed. The preparations for the mating ceremony consumed the next week. Seamstresses arrived with bolts of fabric. The kitchens worked around the clock preparing feast dishes. Warriors scrubbed the great hall until the stone gleamed, but beneath the celebration, tension simmered. Not everyone was happy about Theron's choice. "A human?" Sable overheard one of the council members hissing to another in the corridor. "He's mating a human? What kind of message does that send to the other packs?" "She saved Cinder's life," the other replied, though his tone suggested he didn't think that was enough. "So did half the warriors who fought at Blackrock Pass. Are we giving them crowns too?" Sable had learned to ignore such comments, but when she mentioned them to Theron, his expression darkened. "Give me names." "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Theron," she caught his hand, "they're not wrong to have concerns. I am human. I don't understand pack politics or territorial laws or half the traditions they hold sacred. They have every right to question whether I'm fit to stand beside you. You pulled my nephew from a burning building. You helped expose a conspiracy that had been rotting this pack from the inside for years. You faced down assassins without flinching." His grip tightened. "Anyone who questions your worth can answer to me personally." But the whispers didn't stop. 2 days before the ceremony, Sable was summoned to meet with the council. Theron wanted to accompany her, but she refused. "If I'm going to be their queen, I need to face them on my own terms." The council chamber was a circular room with high ceilings and narrow windows, 7 seats arranged in a semicircle, though one remained empty, Varine's former position, not yet filled. The remaining 6 council members watched her enter with expressions ranging from polite neutrality to barely concealed hostility. Lady Sable. The speaker was an older woman named Petra, sharp-eyed and silver-haired. "Thank you for meeting with us. You requested my presence. I assumed it wasn't optional." A thin smile. "Direct. I appreciate that. We'll be equally direct. This mating concerns us." I gathered. "You're human," said Marcus, a heavy-set man with scars crossing his face. "No offense intended, but you don't understand our ways, our laws, the responsibilities that come with being Alpha Queen." "You're right. I don't. Yet." "Yet?" Petra raised an eyebrow. "I'm capable of learning. Unless you believe humans are inherently too stupid to understand pack politics?" Marcus bristled. "That's not what I upped it. Then what are you saying?" Sable kept her voice level. "That because I wasn't born a wolf, I'm unfit to stand beside Theron? That saving his nephew's life, helping expose a conspiracy, surviving an assassination attempt, none of that matters because I'm the wrong species?" "It's not about worth," Petra said carefully. "It's about precedent. No Alpha King has ever taken a human mate. The other packs will see this as weakness. They'll test our borders, challenge our authority. You become a liability the moment you accept that crown." "I become a target, you mean?" "Yes." Sable absorbed this. She'd known it intellectually, but hearing it stated so bluntly was different. So what are you asking? That I refuse him? Walk away to make your political lives easier? We're asking, said another council member, a younger man named Garrett, that you consider what's best for the pack, not just what you want. You think I haven't? Sable's voice sharpened. You think I don't know that marrying Theron paints a target on my back? That I'll spend the rest of my life proving myself to people who will never fully accept me? She stood, meeting each of their gazes in turn. I know exactly what I'm signing up for, and I'm doing it anyway. Not because I'm reckless or naive, but because I love him, and because I believe I can help him build something stronger than your precious precedents. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Petra spoke. You have fire. I'll give you that. Is that all you wanted? To intimidate me into backing down? We wanted to take your measure. Petra's expression was unreadable. See what kind of woman had captured our king's heart, whether you'd crumble under pressure or stand your ground. And your verdict? The jury is still out, but you're not what I expected. I'll take that as a compliment. You should probably take it as a warning. Petra stood. This path you're choosing, it won't be easy. The other packs will come for you. They'll test you in ways that have nothing to do with fires or assassins. They'll undermine you with words, with politics, with traditions you don't understand. And some of them will succeed. Then I'll learn faster. You'll need to. Petra moved toward the door, pausing beside Sable. For what it's worth, I hope you do. Theron hasn't been this alive in years. It would be a shame to watch that light go out. After the council meeting, Sable found herself restless. The encounter had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Not because they'd intimidated her, but because they'd articulated fears she'd been trying to ignore. She was human. She didn't belong in this world. And yet, she'd said yes. She found Cinder in her chambers. The pup sprawled across her bed like he owned it. He lifted his head when she entered, tail thumping. Some guard dog you are, she said, scratching behind his ears. Sleeping on the job. Cinder yawned, showing sharp puppy teeth, then licked her hand. Sable sat on the edge of the bed, and the pup immediately crawled into her lap, far too big for it, but not caring. She buried her fingers in his silver fur, taking comfort in the simple warmth of him. Your uncle is going to get me killed, she told him. You know that, right? Between the conspiracies and the politics, and everyone who thinks I'm not good enough, I'm going to end up dead in a ditch somewhere. Cinder made a sound that might have been disagreement. You're biased. I saved your life. You defend me even if I was actually terrible at this. The pup settled his head on her knee, those amber eyes watching her with disturbing intelligence. The council thinks I'm a liability, she continued. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am. But I can't walk away from him. I've tried to talk myself out of this 100 times, and I just can't. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Theron entered without waiting for permission, his eyes immediately finding her. Corin said the council summoned you. They did. And? And they think I'm going to get you killed, or at the very least make your life significantly harder. She managed a weak smile. They're probably not wrong. Theron crossed to her, kneeling so they were eye level. What did they say to you? Nothing I wasn't already thinking. That I'm human, that I don't understand your world, that other packs will see me as weakness. She looked down at Cinder. That I'm a liability. You're not. Don't. She cut him off gently. Don't tell me I'm not. We both know there's truth in what they said. I am a risk, Theron. Every day I stand beside you is a day your enemies can point to me as proof you've gone soft, that you've chosen sentiment over strength. His jaw tightened. I don't care what they think. You should. You're their king, and you're going to be their queen. His hands framed her face. I need you to hear this, Sable. Really hear it. I'm not choosing you despite the risks. I'm choosing you because of who you are, because you ran into a fire for a stranger. Because you faced down assassins and conspirators without breaking. Because when the council tried to intimidate you, I'm betting you stared them down and refused to back down. She couldn't help the small smile. Maybe. That's not weakness. That's strength. The kind of strength this pack needs. The kind I need. He pressed his forehead to hers. So let them whisper. Let them doubt. We'll prove them wrong together. You make it sound easy. It won't be. but nothing worth having ever is. She kissed him then, soft and slow, trying to pour everything she couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, Cinder was watching them with what could only be described as satisfaction. "Even the pup knows we're right for each other," Theron said, grinning. "The pup is 6 months old and thinks stealing socks is a productive use of time. I'm not sure we should trust his judgment. I trust his instincts, and his instincts led him to you." The mating ceremony was held under the full moon, the same moon that Varen had planned to use for his attack, now reclaimed for celebration. The entire pack gathered in the great hall, torches blazing, voices raised in songs that had been sung for generations. Sable wore deep green silk that Theron had commissioned, the fabric shot through with silver threads that caught the light like stars. Cinder stood beside her, groomed until his silver fur gleamed, a ribbon of green silk tied around his neck. He'd refused to leave her side during preparations, and eventually everyone had stopped trying to separate them. Theron waited at the hall's center, dressed in formal black with his family crest emblazoned on his chest. When Sable entered, his expression transformed. Wonder, reverence, love so open it stole her breath. She walked to him through a sea of faces, Corin grinning despite himself. Bren, who had become something like a friend during the hunt for Varen. Dozens of warriors and servants and pack members who had accepted her with surprising ease, and a few whose expressions remained closed, skeptical. She met their gazes directly. She wouldn't look away, wouldn't pretend she didn't see their doubts. When she reached Theron, he took her hands, and the hall fell silent. "Before these witnesses," he said, his voice carrying to every corner, "I claim Sable as my mate. Not because of politics, not because of duty, but because my heart recognized hers from the moment we met. Because she ran into fire for a stranger. Because she faced down assassins and traitors without flinching. Because she is the bravest, most stubborn, most remarkable person I have ever known." Sable's throat tightened. "Before these witnesses," she managed, "I accept Theron as my mate. Not because he's the Alpha King, not because he saved my life, but because he saw me. Really saw me when I'd spent years trying to be invisible. Because he gave me a choice when he could have demanded obedience. Because he makes me believe I deserve happiness even when I'd forgotten how to want it." Theron's eyes glistened. He raised their joined hands, and the pack's new healer, a young woman named Lyra, who had replaced Isella, stepped forward with the ceremonial blade. The cuts were shallow, symbolic. Blood welled up, and when Sable pressed her palm to Theron's, she felt the bond snap fully into place. Not a chain, a bridge, connection without captivity, partnership without possession. Magic flared between them, visible as golden light that made the pack gasp. It spiraled up their arms, wrapping around them like living flame, warm but not burning. And then Sable felt it. The bond, yes, but something else underneath. Something that had been dormant her entire life, sleeping until this moment. Power. It rushed through her veins like wildfire, ancient and raw and completely foreign. Her vision sharpened, colors becoming almost painfully vivid. She could hear heartbeats in the crowd, smell fear and joy and skepticism as distinct scents. Could feel the earth beneath her feet like it was part of her body. "Sable?" Theron's voice sounded distant. "What's happening?" She tried to answer, but the power kept building, climbing, demanding release. Her skin felt too tight. Her bones ached like they wanted to reshape themselves. No, that was impossible. She was human, wasn't she? The golden light around them intensified, so bright people were shielding their eyes. Sable heard gasps, murmurs of confusion and alarm. And then, through the haze of power threatening to consume her, she heard a voice. Old, papery, achingly familiar. "I'm sorry, child. I should have told you." Sable's head snapped toward the entrance. There, leaning heavily on a walking stick, stood Mirren. The old healer looked ancient and exhausted, like the journey from her cottage had cost her dearly. "Told me what?" Sable managed, her voice strange in her own ears. "The truth about what you are." Mirren's eyes held sorrow and resignation. "About why you survived that fire. Why you heal so fast. Why the bond didn't just form, it awakened something." Theron moved to Sable's side, his hand on her shoulder grounding her. "Mirren, what are you saying?" The old healer looked at Sable with something like grief. Your mother made me promise. Made me swear I'd never tell you unless you were in danger. And you weren't. Not until now. Not until the bond. Tell me what? Sable's voice cracked. You're not human, Sable. Mirren's voice was gentle, devastating. You never were. Your mother was a wolf, from a bloodline everyone thought died out decades ago. She hid among humans to protect you, to keep you safe from those who would have killed you for what you represent. The hall erupted, shocked voices, angry denials, Theron's advisors shouting questions. But Sable heard none of it. She stared at Mirren, at the woman who had saved her, raised her, lied to her for 8 years. That's not possible, she whispered. I would know. I would have shifted. Your mother bound your wolf before she died, to protect you, to give you a chance at a normal life. Mirren's hands trembled on her walking stick. The bond with Theron broke that binding, awakened what was sleeping inside you, and now the power surged again, and this time Sable couldn't fight it. Her body convulsed. Pain lanced through every muscle, every bone. She heard herself screaming, heard Theron shouting her name, felt Cinder's desperate whining, and then everything changed. Her bones broke and reformed, her skin stretched and reshaped. Fur erupted across her body, silver white like cinders, like starlight made solid. When the transformation completed, Sable stood on 4 legs in the center of the great hall, surrounded by a pack that had gone deathly silent. She was a wolf. She had always been a wolf. And judging by the expressions of horror and recognition on the older council members' faces, she was something far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Petra was the first to break the silence, her voice cutting through the shock like a blade. Silverborn! The word sent a ripple through the crowd. Murmurs became shouts, fear mixing with disbelief. Warriors reached for weapons that weren't there, ceremonial dress, no blades allowed, and several council members backed toward the exits. Sable stood frozen in her new form, her wolf's instinct screaming at her to run, to fight, to do something other than stand exposed in front of hundreds of eyes that now looked at her like she was a ghost or a threat. Theron shifted in an instant, his black wolf moving between Sable and the crowd, a low warning growl rumbling from his chest. The message was clear. Anyone who wanted to reach her would go through him first. Explain. His voice, even in wolf form, carried the weight of command. Now. Mirren stepped forward, her walking stick tapping against stone. She looked smaller than Sable remembered, frailer, like the truth she'd been carrying had been crushing her all along. The Silverborn line was thought extinct, Mirren said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Hunted to near extinction 3 generations ago during the Purge, when the old king feared their power. They were prophesied to either unite the packs or destroy them entirely. She looked at Sable with something like sorrow. Sable's mother, Ilara, was the last known survivor. She fled to human territories, bound her wolf, lived as one of them to escape notice. If she bound her wolf, how did she have a child? Marcus demanded, his face pale. That's not possible. The bond weakened over time. Or maybe love found a way. Mirren's gaze didn't waver. Sable's father was human, but Ilara's wolf was strong enough that her daughter inherited it. Ilara knew what would happen if anyone discovered the truth, so she bound Sable's wolf the day she was born, made me promise to keep the secret, and prayed it would be enough. But it wasn't, Petra's voice was ice, because she's standing here shifted in front of the entire pack. The mating bond broke the binding, Mirren said. Theron's bloodline is too strong, too ancient. When their bond formed, it shattered everything Ilara had built to protect her daughter. Sable wanted to speak, to defend herself, to demand answers, but her wolf form was still foreign, still wrong. She didn't know how to shift back, didn't know if she even could. Panic clawed at her throat, or whatever the wolf equivalent was. Theron nosed against her shoulder, gentle, grounding. The contact sent warmth through the bond, steady and sure, and some of the panic receded. Can she shift back? Theron asked Mirren. I don't know. She's never done this before. It could take hours, could take minutes. The old healer moved closer, ignoring the warriors who tensed at her approach. Sable, can you hear me? Can you understand? Sable managed a small nod, the movement awkward in this body. Focus on your human form. Picture yourself as you were. The bond will help. Theron's presence will anchor you. Sable closed her eyes, her wolf's eyes, and tried to remember what it felt like to have hands instead of paws, skin instead of fur, a voice that could form words instead of growls. Nothing happened. She tried harder, pulling at the power that had surged through her during the transformation, trying to reverse it, but it was like grabbing smoke. The more she reached for it, the more it slipped away. Theron pressed closer, his presence steady through the bond. She felt his confidence, his certainty that she could do this, and it helped. The panic receded further, and then, finally, something shifted. The transformation back was slower than the first, less violent, but no less painful. Bones reshaped themselves with grinding protest. Fur receded into skin that felt too sensitive, too exposed. When it finished, Sable collapsed to her knees on the stone floor, naked and trembling. Someone threw a cloak over her shoulders. Corin, his face carefully neutral. Sable pulled it tight around herself, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the fabric. Theron shifted back beside her, his hand immediately finding hers. "You're okay. I've got you." But the hall was in chaos. Council members shouting over each other, warriors demanding explanations, pack members backing away like she was contagious. "Silverborn," Marcus said again, the word dripping with venom. "Do you have any idea what this means? What she represents?" "I know the stories," Theron said coldly. "And I know they're just that. Stories. Fear-mongering from a time when the old king was paranoid and cruel." "The prophecy isn't a story," Petra said. "Silverborn will either unite all packs under one banner or burn them to ash." Those were the exact words. "Your father told me himself. He spent years making sure every last one of them was gone." Sable's blood turned to ice. Theron's father hunted them? Not personally, but he sanctioned it, funded it, made it policy. Petra's expression was grim. The Silverborn line was too dangerous to let live. Their power was too great, too unpredictable. They could command other wolves with a thought, break bonds, forge new ones. In the wrong hands, that kind of power could topple kingdoms. "And you think I'm going to topple your kingdom?" Sable's voice was raw, but anger gave it strength. "I didn't even know I was a wolf until 5 minutes ago. I can barely shift back. You think I'm some kind of threat?" "You're mated to the Alpha King," Marcus shot back. "That makes you the most dangerous person in this territory, whether you know how to use your power or not." "Enough!" Theron's voice cracked like thunder. The entire hall fell silent. "Sable is my mate, my queen. Whatever power she has, whatever bloodline she carries, she stands under my protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me directly." "Your Majesty," Petra said carefully, "no one is threatening her. But you have to understand the position this puts us in. The other packs will hear about this. They'll see a Silverborn sitting on the throne beside you, and they'll panic. Some will want to negotiate, to forge alliances before she becomes too powerful. Others will want her dead. Then they can try." Theron's grip on Sable's hand tightened. "And fail. You can't fight the entire North. Watch me." The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to choke on. Sable could feel eyes on her, dozens of them, weighing her worth, calculating the threat she posed. Then Cinder moved. The pup trotted forward, completely unbothered by the chaos, and pressed himself against Sable's side. His tail wagged, his amber eyes bright, and he licked her hand like nothing had changed, like she was still the woman who'd pulled him from the fire, regardless of what she could turn into. Something in the hall shifted. Not much, but enough. "The pup recognizes her," Bren said quietly. "Bonded to her before anyone knew what she was. That has to count for something." "A 6-month-old pup isn't exactly a character reference," Marcus muttered. "No, but instinct is." Corin stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "Wolves bond to those they trust, those they recognize as pack. Cinder bonded to her when she was supposedly human. If her bloodline made her dangerous, unstable, he would have sensed it. Or he's too young to know better. Or maybe," Theron said, his voice deadly quiet, "the Silverborn were never the monsters my father made them out to be. Maybe they were just powerful, and power scared him. So he destroyed them and called it protection." Petra's expression flickered, something like guilt crossing her features. "Your father did what he thought was necessary. My father was wrong about a lot of things." Theron stood, pulling Sable up with him. And I won't repeat his mistakes. Sable stays. The mating stands. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me in the training yard tomorrow morning. The challenge hung in the air, sharp and unmistakable. No one took him up on it. The crowd began to disperse slowly, reluctantly, still muttering among themselves. Some looked at Sable with fear, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been respect, but most just looked confused, like the world had shifted beneath their feet and they were still trying to find solid ground. Mirren approached as the hall emptied, her eyes on Sable. "I'm sorry, child. I know this isn't how you wanted to find out." "You lied to me." Sable's voice was flat. "For 8 years you lied. I kept you safe. You kept me ignorant." The anger felt good, clean, easier than the fear and confusion roiling beneath. Did my mother know? When she died, did she know what I was? She knew. She made the choice to bind your wolf, to give you a chance at a normal life. She thought if you never shifted, never knew, you could avoid the fate the rest of your family met. And instead I walked right into it. Sable laughed bitterly. "Save the nephew of the man whose father hunted my entire bloodline to extinction. That's rich. Theron is not his father," Mirren said firmly. "And you are not your bloodline's prophecy. You're Sable, the girl who survived a massacre, who learned healing from an old woman in a cottage, who ran into a fire for a stranger. That doesn't change because you can shift. Doesn't it?" Sable looked down at her hands, still trembling. "Everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie. I'm not human, never was. And apparently I'm supposed to either unite the North or burn it down. No pressure. Prophecies are malleable things," Mirren said. "They tell you what might happen, not what must. You still have choices, Sable. You've always had choices." Before Sable could respond, Theron's hand found the small of her back. "We should go. You need rest, and I need to deal with the council before they work themselves into a panic." "I don't need rest. I need answers." "Then we'll get them. Together." He guided her toward a side exit, away from the lingering crowd. "But first, you need to get out of that cloak and into actual clothes before someone decides a half-naked Silverborn is more than they can handle tonight." Despite everything, Sable almost smiled. Always so practical. One of us has to be. They made it to Theron's chambers, their chambers now, she supposed, before the shaking started in earnest. Adrenaline crash, shock, the sheer impossibility of everything that had happened in the last hour. Sable collapsed into a chair by the fire, Cinder immediately claiming her lap despite being far too large for it. She buried her face in his fur, trying to breathe, trying to think. Theron knelt beside her, his hands gentle on her knees. "Talk to me. I don't know where to start. Start anywhere. I'm a wolf." The words felt absurd. "I'm a wolf, and I didn't know. How does someone not know they're a wolf?" "Your mother bound it. You heard Mirren." "I heard a lot of things." Sable raised her head, meeting his eyes. "I heard that your father hunted my family, killed them, made it policy to erase us entirely." Theron's jaw tightened. "I didn't know. I swear to you, Sable, I had no idea. My father never spoke about the Silverborn, never mentioned the hunts. I thought they were just legends, cautionary tales about power corrupting. And now? Now I know my father was a coward who destroyed what he didn't understand." His voice was hard. "But I'm not him, and whatever he did, whatever sins he committed against your family, they're not yours to bear. The council doesn't see it that way. The council will learn." Sable wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this could work, that she could somehow navigate being a queen and a Silverborn and whatever else fate decided to throw at her. But doubt crept in, cold and insidious. "What if they're right?" she whispered. "What if I am dangerous? What if this power inside me is everything they fear? Then we'll figure it out." Theron's hands framed her face. "Together, like we've figured out everything else. This is different. Is it? You've faced assassins, conspiracies, council members trying to intimidate you. You've survived things that would break most people. This is just one more challenge. This is me potentially destroying everything you've built. Or helping me build something better." He kissed her forehead. "I'm not afraid of your power, Sable. I'm not afraid of what you might become. I'm only afraid of losing you." The words cracked something open in her chest. She kissed him then, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. When they broke apart, Cinder was watching them with what could only be described as approval. "Even the pup thinks you're being dramatic," Theron said, a hint of his usual humor returning. "The pup is biased. The pup has excellent judgment." Over the next few days, Sable learned what it meant to be Silverborn. Mirren stayed at the castle, teaching her the basics of shifting, of controlling the power that now flowed through her veins like a second heartbeat. It wasn't easy. The wolf wanted out constantly, prowling beneath her skin, testing the boundaries of control. "Your mother bound it for 23 years, Mirren explained during one particularly frustrating session. "It's going to fight you now that it's free. You have to negotiate with it, not dominate it." "How do I negotiate with an instinct?" "You listen. Feel what it wants, why it wants it. Your wolf isn't separate from you. It's part of you. The part that survived that fire, that ran into danger when logic said run away. Give it room to exist without letting it take over completely." It sounded impossible. But slowly, painfully, Sable began to understand. The wolf wasn't trying to control her. It was trying to protect her. Every time someone looked at her with suspicion or fear, the wolf rose, ready to defend. Every time Theron left for council meetings or border patrols, the wolf paced, worried for its mate. Every time Cinder whimpered in his sleep, the wolf wanted to comfort him. It wasn't a monster. It was just another part of her, one she'd never been allowed to know. "Better," Mirren said after a successful shift in return. "You're learning faster than I expected." "I had a good teacher." Sable flexed her fingers, marveling at how normal they looked, like the last hour of being a wolf was a dream. "Mirren, the prophecy. Do you know the actual words?" The old healer hesitated. "Some of them." "Tell me." "Sable, I need to know what I'm dealing with, what everyone thinks I'm going to do." Mirren sighed. "Silver fur and silver tongue, born of ancient line. Unite the fractured packs or watch them burn in time. Power to command the wolf, to break what should not bend. The Silverborn will shape the North, to glory or to end." "That's wonderfully vague." "Prophecies usually are." "So I'm either going to unite everyone or kill everyone. Great options." "Or you're going to do neither." Mirren's expression was stern. "Prophecies aren't mandates, child. They're possibilities. What you do with your power, how you choose to use it, that's up to you." Sable wanted to believe that. But the weight of expectation, of fear, of centuries of her family being hunted because of those words, pressed down on her shoulders. "The other packs," she said. "Have they heard yet?" "Word is spreading. Theron's been fielding messages all day. Some want to negotiate, some want reassurance, and some—" Mirren trailed off. "Want me dead." "Yes." It shouldn't have hurt. She'd known it was coming. But hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. "How many?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." Mirren looked at her for a long moment. 3 packs have formally requested your execution. 2 more are considering it. The rest are waiting to see what you do, how you handle the power. So no pressure at all. You've handled worse. Have I? You survived Varine's conspiracy. You faced down Isella in those gardens. You stood in front of the council and didn't back down. Mirren's voice softened. "You're stronger than you know, Sable. Silverborn or not, you're strong enough for this." Sable wished she could believe that. That night, Theron called an emergency council meeting. Sable attended, despite several members' protests, sitting at his right hand like she had every right to be there. Because she did. She was his mate, his queen. Whatever else she might be, that remained true. "The Eastern Pack has sent an envoy," Theron announced without preamble. "They arrive tomorrow. They want to meet Sable, assess the threat she poses." "And if they decide she's too dangerous?" Marcus asked. "Then they'll leave unsatisfied." Theron's voice was ice. "I'm not putting my mate on trial for existing. Your Majesty, with respect, this is bigger than one person. If the Eastern Pack decides Sable is a threat and we refuse to act, they could rally the other packs against us. We'd be facing war. Then we face war." "Theron," Sable's voice cut through the tension. Every head turned toward her. "If meeting with them prevents bloodshed, I'll do it." "Absolutely not. It's not your choice." She met his gaze, saw the fury and fear warring there. I won't hide. I won't let you start a war to protect me when there might be another way. They want to judge whether you deserve to live. Then they can judge. And I'll show them I'm not what they fear. You don't know that. You don't know what they'll see when they look at you. I know what I am, Sable stood, addressing the entire council. I'm Silverborn, yes. I carry power I'm still learning to control, but I'm also the woman who saved Cinder, who helped expose Varen's conspiracy, who's been living peacefully for 8 years without even knowing I had a wolf. I'm not a monster. I'm not a threat. And I'm willing to prove that to anyone who asks. Silence fell. Then Petra spoke, her voice thoughtful. The Eastern Pack's alpha is Rowan. He's old, traditional, but he's also fair. If you can convince him you're in control, that you're not a danger to the established order, he might sway the others. And if I can't? Then we prepare for the worst. Petra's expression was grim. But for what it's worth, I think you have a chance. You've already proven yourself to this pack. Prove yourself to him, and maybe we avoid war after all. Theron looked like he wanted to argue, to forbid it entirely. But he also knew Sable was right, knew that hiding would only confirm everyone's worst fears. Fine, he said through gritted teeth, but I'm there the entire time, and at the first sign of hostility, we'll handle it. Sable's hand found his under the table, squeezed. Together. The envoy arrived at midday, a contingent of 20 wolves led by Alpha Rowan himself. He was exactly as Petra had described, old, silver-haired, with eyes that missed nothing and a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. Sable met them in this great hall, Theron at her side, Cinder at her feet. She wore green again, the color that had become hers, and forced herself to stand tall despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Rowan studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice rough with age but strong. Silverborn. I thought I'd never see another in my lifetime. I thought I was human until a week ago, Sable replied. So we're both surprised. A hint of amusement crossed his face. Direct. I like that. He moved closer, and Sable forced herself not to step back. May I? May you what? Touch you. Read your wolf. It's the only way to know for certain whether the power has corrupted you. Sable glanced at Theron, saw his jaw tight with tension, but also saw his small nod. Permission, but also warning. If Rowan hurt her, there would be consequences. All right, she said. Rowan placed his hand on her forehead, and power flooded through the connection. Not hostile, but searching, probing, testing the boundaries of her wolf. Sable felt him rifling through her instincts, her memories, the bond with Theron and the connection to Cinder. Felt him weighing her control, her intentions, the core of who she was beneath the power. It should have felt invasive, violating, but there was something almost gentle about it, like he was trying to understand rather than judge. When he pulled away, his expression had shifted, softened. Well, Marcus demanded, is she a threat? She's strong, Rowan said slowly, stronger than she knows. The power is there, dormant but growing. In time, she could command packs with a thought, could reshape bonds, could do all the things the prophecy claims. Sable's heart sank. But, Rowan continued, she has no desire to. Her wolf is protective, fiercely loyal to her mate and to the pup she saved. There's no hunger for conquest, no ambition beyond survival and protecting those she loves. He looked at Sable directly. You're not what I expected, Silverborn. What did you expect? Someone drunk on power. Someone who would use what they have to dominate others. Someone who would make the prophecy come true through sheer arrogance. He smiled, small and genuine. Instead, I find a young woman who didn't even know she had power until a week ago, who's terrified of hurting anyone, who would rather negotiate than fight. So you'll tell the other packs she's not a threat? Theron's voice was carefully controlled. I'll tell them she's not a threat now. Rowan's gaze returned to Sable. But power changes people. What you are today might not be what you are in a year or 10 years. The other alphas will want reassurance that you won't become what they fear. What kind of reassurance? A blood oath. To never use your Silverborn abilities to command or control another pack's wolves without their alpha's explicit permission. To never attempt to unite the packs by force. To wield your power only in defense, never in conquest. Sable's throat tightened. And if I refuse? Then the other packs will see you as the threat the prophecy promises, and they'll act accordingly. It wasn't really a choice. It was submit or die. But something in Rowan's eyes told her he understood that he wasn't happy about it either. He was just trying to prevent a war. I'll take the oath, Sable said. Sable, Theron started. I'll take it, she repeated firmly. I have no desire to control anyone, no ambition to unite the packs by force. If swearing it in blood prevents bloodshed, then that's what I'll do. Rowan nodded slowly. Witnessed and sealed before all the alphas. We'll arrange a gathering at the neutral ground in 3 weeks. You'll speak the oath there, and the matter will be settled. And if she honors it, if she keeps her word, then she'll be the first Silverborn in 3 generations to die of old age instead of assassination. Rowan's expression was grave. That's the best I can offer. It should have felt like defeat, like surrendering before the fight even began. But looking at Theron, at Cinder, at the council members who had started to accept her, Sable realized it wasn't surrender. It was survival, the thing she'd always been best at. 3 weeks, she agreed. I'll be there. Rowan and his envoy left the next morning, and the castle released a collective breath it had been holding. The immediate crisis was averted. Sable wasn't going to be executed on sight, but the weight of the coming oath pressed down on her like a stone. You don't have to do this, Theron said that night, holding her close in their chambers. We could fight. Defend your right to exist without restrictions. And how many people would die in that fight? How many packs would burn because I refused to make a simple promise? She turned to face him. I don't want power over others, Theron. I never did. Swearing an oath that I'll never use abilities I don't even fully understand yet? That's easy. Nothing about this is easy. No, but it's right. She pressed her forehead to his. Your father hunted my family because he feared what they might do. I'm not going to become the monster he imagined by refusing to prove I'm not one. You're too good for this world. I'm really not. I'm just tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. She kissed him softly. I want to live, Theron. Actually live, not just survive. And if taking this oath means I get to do that, then it's worth it. He held her tighter, and they stayed that way until dawn, drawing strength from each other. 3 weeks later, Sable stood in the neutral ground, a wide clearing surrounded by ancient trees that had witnessed countless treaties and broken promises. Every major pack in the north had sent representatives, dozens of alphas, hundreds of wolves, all gathered to watch her swear away her birthright, or save her life, depending on how you looked at it. Rowan stood at the center, officiating. Theron was beside her, his hand in hers, refusing to leave her side. Cinder sat at her feet, now nearly full-grown, his silver fur gleaming in the afternoon sun. Sable of the Silverborn line, Rowan intoned, his voice carrying across the clearing. Do you swear, on your blood and your wolf, to never use your abilities to command or control another pack's wolves without their alpha's explicit permission? I swear it. Do you swear to never attempt to unite the packs by force, by compulsion, or by any means other than willing alliance? I swear it. Do you swear to wield your power only in defense, never in conquest, never in ambition, never in the pursuit of the prophecy your bloodline carries? Sable hesitated. This was it. The moment that would define the rest of her life. She thought about her mother, who had bound her wolf to protect her. About Mirin, who had kept the secret for 8 years. About Theron, who stood beside her despite everything. About Cinder, who had bonded to her before anyone knew what she was. I swear it, she said clearly. On my blood, on my wolf, on the bond I share with my mate. I swear it before all witnesses. Rowan took a ceremonial blade and cut her palm, let the blood well up and drip onto the earth. Ancient magic stirred, recognizing the oath, binding it into her very essence. Then let it be known, Rowan announced, that the Silverborn walks among us not as conqueror, but as guardian. Not as threat, but as ally. Any who seek her harm without cause will answer to all the packs assembled here. It wasn't quite acceptance, it wasn't quite trust, but it was a chance, a fragile, precious chance to prove that prophecies didn't have to come true. that bloodlines didn't define destiny, that she could be Sable and Silverborn without burning the world down. The gathered alphas murmured among themselves, but no one objected. No one challenged the oath. And slowly, one by one, they began to shift into their wolf forms and howl. The sound started with Rowan's pack, spread to the next, then the next, until the entire clearing echoed with the ancient song of acceptance, of welcome, of pack. Theron shifted beside her, adding his voice to the chorus. And then, without thinking about it, without fear, Sable let her wolf rise. The transformation came easier this time, smoother. And when she howled, silver-furred and strong, the sound carried across the clearing and into the mountains beyond. She was Silverborn. She was Sable. She was both and neither and everything in between. And for the first time since the truth had been revealed, she thought maybe that was enough. The howling faded into silence, and Sable shifted back to human form, accepting the cloak someone offered without looking to see who. The gathered alphas began to disperse, some nodding to her in acknowledgement, others simply turning away. Not hostility, but not warmth either. Acceptance, grudging and fragile, but acceptance nonetheless. Theron's hand found hers as they walked back toward the horses. "You did it." "I made a promise." She looked down at the cut on her palm, already healing faster than it should. "Whether I can keep it is another question entirely." "You will." She wished she had his confidence. The ride back to Ashvale was quiet. Cinder ran alongside them, full of energy despite the tension of the oath ceremony. Several times he veered off to chase rabbits or investigate interesting smells, always circling back before Sable could start to worry. "He's getting big," she remarked, watching the pup, no, young wolf now, bound through the underbrush. "He'll be full-grown in another few months," Theron's voice held a note of fondness. "Fenrir would have been proud of him." "He would have been proud of you too, the way you handled Varen, the conspiracy, all of it." "I had help." He glanced at her. "More than I deserved." "You had exactly what you needed. Sometimes that's how it works." They arrived at the castle as the sun was setting, painting the black stone in shades of amber and gold. Warriors greeted them at the gates, and Sable saw the shift in how they looked at her now. Not quite fear, but wariness, respect mixed with uncertainty. She was Silverborn. That changed everything, even when it changed nothing at all. "Your Majesty." Corin met them in the courtyard, his expression troubled. "We have a situation." Theron's posture shifted immediately. "What kind of situation?" "Northern border. Scouts report movement. Large group, maybe 60 wolves. They're not attacking, but they're also not retreating. Just waiting." "Which pack?" "No pack insignia. No identification. But they're organized, disciplined. This isn't a raiding party." Sable felt her wolf stir, restless and alert. "How long have they been there?" "Since this morning. They arrived right after you left for the oath ceremony." Corin's gaze flickered to her. "I don't think that's coincidence." "No, neither did she. I'll gather the war council," Theron said. "Wait." Sable's hand on his arm stopped him. "Let me go." "Absolutely not." "Theron, they showed up the day I took the oath. They're here because of me, because of what I am. Sending warriors will just escalate things. Let me talk to them." "You don't know what they want?" "Then I'll find out, but I won't cower behind walls while someone else fights my battles." She met his gaze, saw the war between his protective instincts and his trust in her judgment. "I can do this. I need to do this." He was silent for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine, but I'm coming with you, and we bring 24 warriors in case talking fails." "Deal." They reached the northern border 2 hours later, the mysterious group visible in the distance. They'd made no move to advance, hadn't set up camp, just stood in formation like they were waiting for something, or someone. As Sable and Theron approached, flanked by warriors, a figure stepped forward from the group. Female, tall, with dark hair shot through with silver and eyes that glowed amber even in human form. "Sable of the Silverborn line," the woman called out. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Sable's wolf recognized her before her human mind could process it. The scent, the power radiating from her, the way her presence made Sable's instincts scream recognition. "You're Silverborn," Sable said. The woman smiled, sharp and knowing. "I'm Kira. And yes, I am. Your mother was my cousin, which makes you family. The last family I have left, actually. The words hit like a physical blow. That's not possible. Mirren said my mother was the last. Mirren said what your mother told her to say. What Alara believed to be true. Kira moved closer, hands raised to show she meant no harm. Your mother thought she was the last because that's what our family wanted the world to believe. We went into hiding, scattered across territories, pretended to be from lesser bloodlines or lived among humans. Survival over pride. Theron moved between them, protective. If you're Silverborn, why reveal yourself now? Because Sable took the oath. Because she proved to every alpha in the North that she's not the monster they fear. Because for the first time in 3 generations, it's safe enough to admit what we are. Kira's gaze shifted to the warriors behind them. There are 17 of us left. 17 Silverborns scattered across the territories, hiding, pretending, waiting for the day we could stop running. You gave us that day. I gave you... Sable shook her head, trying to process. I don't understand. I swore never to use my power, never to unite the packs. How does that help you? You survived, Kira said simply. You stood in front of the alphas and showed them we're not what the old king made us out to be. You took an oath that protects you, yes, but it also protects all of us. As long as we honor the same restrictions, we can stop hiding. We can come home. Sable felt the weight of it settling over her shoulders. She'd thought the oath was just about saving her own life, about proving she wasn't a threat. She hadn't considered that she might be saving others too. So you came here to... what? Thank me? We came to offer our allegiance. Kira knelt, and behind her the rest of her group did the same. 60 wolves, 17 of them Silverborn, all kneeling in the dirt. To the first of our bloodline in 3 generations to claim a throne, to the woman who proved we deserve to exist. I didn't claim anything. I'm Theron's mate, his queen, but that's everything. Kira's expression was fierce. You're Silverborn and Alpha Queen. You bridge the gap between what we were and what we can become. If you'll have us, we'd like to serve that vision. To help build a North where bloodlines don't determine worth, where power is used to protect rather than oppress. Sable looked at Theron, saw her own shock mirrored in his face. This is your territory. Your decision. It's our territory, he corrected. Our decision. And I think... He studied Kira and her people, weighing risks against possibilities. I think 17 Silverborn swearing the same oath you did, choosing to serve rather than conquer, sends a powerful message to the other packs. It also paints a bigger target on our backs, Sable said quietly. Yes, but we've had targets on our backs since the moment you shifted in that great hall. At least this way we're not facing them alone. He was right. And looking at Kira, at the hope barely contained in her expression, Sable knew she couldn't turn them away. These were her people, the family she'd never known she had, survivors of the same purge that had stolen her mother. Get up, she said. All of you. If you're joining us, you're not doing it on your knees. Kira rose, a smile breaking across her face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince the council this isn't the beginning of a Silverborn takeover. Leave that to me, Theron said. I'm getting pretty good at fighting with my own advisors. The council meeting that followed was exactly as explosive as Sable had anticipated. 17 Silverborn? Marcus looked like he might have a heart attack. You want to bring 17 Silverborn into our territory, give them sanctuary, let them serve in our guard? I want to give them the same choice I gave Sable, Theron said calmly. A chance to prove they're not the monsters my father made them out to be. Your father hunted them for a reason. My father hunted them because he was afraid. Fear is not policy. It's cowardice dressed up as protection. Petra leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. If they take the same oath Sable did, witnessed and binding, that changes the calculation. 17 Silverborn who can't use their powers for conquest or control are just 17 very strong wolves. Strong wolves we could use, given how many warriors we lost during Varen's conspiracy. You're actually considering this? Marcus turned to her, incredulous. I'm considering that the North is changing whether we like it or not. The question is whether we change with it or get left behind. Petra's gaze shifted to Sable. How much do you trust this, Kira? I just met her, Sable admitted. But she's family. She survived the same purge my mother did, lived the same lies. If she wanted to conquer or destroy, she's had years to try. Instead, she stayed hidden until it was safe to reveal herself. Or until she found someone to rally behind, Marcus muttered. I'm not a rallying point, I'm just trying to survive. You're Silverborn and Alpha Queen. You're exactly a rallying point whether you mean to be or not. He wasn't wrong, and that terrified her more than any oath or conspiracy. Vote, Theron said, cutting through the argument. We're a council. Let's act like one. All in favor of allowing Kira's group to join our pack, conditional on them taking the same oath Sable did? Petra's hand went up immediately. Corn's followed. Two others joined after a moment's hesitation. Marcus kept his hands firmly on the table. Motion passes, Theron said. We'll hold the oath ceremony tomorrow at dawn. Any Silverborn who refuses can leave peacefully or face exile. Anyone who breaks the oath after taking it will be executed. No exceptions. Even Sable? Marcus asked pointedly. Even me, Sable said before Theron could respond. The oath applies to all of us equally, or it means nothing. The ceremony at dawn was smaller than the one at the neutral ground, but no less significant. All 17 Silverborn knelt in the courtyard, repeating the words Sable had spoken, letting Lyra cut their palms and bind the oath into their blood. Kira went first, her voice steady and clear, her eyes never leaving Sable's face. When it was done, when all 17 had sworn and bled and bound themselves to peace, Theron addressed the assembled pack. These wolves are now under our protection. They serve this pack, this territory, this vision of a North where bloodlines don't determine worth. Anyone who harms them without cause answers to me personally. It wasn't quite the welcome Sable had hoped for, but it was more than she'd feared. The pack watched the Silverborn with wariness, yes, but also curiosity. Several warriors approached Kira after the ceremony, asking about her fighting experience, her skills, treating her like a potential asset rather than a threat. Progress, Sable thought. Slow and fragile, but progress. Over the following weeks, the Silverborn integrated into pack life with surprising ease. Kira proved to be an exceptional tracker, leading patrols that caught 3 separate border incursions before they could escalate. Others showed skills in healing, strategy, combat training. And slowly, grudgingly, the pack began to accept them. Not all at once, not without setbacks. There were fights, arguments, moments when old fears bubbled to the surface and had to be confronted head-on. But they worked through it. Sable threw herself into learning everything she could about being both Silverborn and Queen. Mirren stayed at the castle, teaching her to control the deeper aspects of her power, the ability to sense other wolves' emotions, to understand pack dynamics on an instinctual level, to command respect without demanding obedience. Your mother would be proud, Mirren said one afternoon, watching Sable successfully mediate a dispute between 2 warriors without raising her voice or using any power beyond simple logic and empathy. My mother lied to me my entire life. Your mother protected you the only way she knew how. There's a difference. Sable wanted to argue, but the anger had faded over time, worn down by understanding. Alara had done what she thought was right, what she believed would keep her daughter safe. It hadn't worked the way she'd planned, but the intention had been love. Sometimes that had to be enough. 6 months after the oath, the Northern Alliance called their annual gathering. Every major pack sent representatives to discuss trade, borders, disputes that needed neutral arbitration. And for the first time in 3 generations, Silverborn attended openly. Sable walked into the gathering hall at Theron's side, Kira and 2 other Silverborn guards flanking them. She felt the weight of every eye in the room, the whispers that followed her movement, but she kept her head high, her shoulders back, her wolf calm and controlled. Rowan greeted them first, his weathered face creasing into something almost like a smile. Sable, good to see the oath hasn't killed you yet. Give it time, she replied dryly. I hear you've taken in more Silverborn. 17 at last count? 17 who've taken the same oath I did. 17 who want to live peacefully instead of in hiding. Bold move. Risky, but bold, he gestured to the hall. You've stirred up quite the debate. Half the alphas think you're going to use those Silverborn to build an army. The other half think you're a naive fool who's going to get herself killed. What do you think? I think you're neither. I think you're exactly what the North needs, even if it doesn't know it yet. He lowered his voice. There's going to be a challenge today. One of the Eastern Alphas, Marcus, no relation to your council member, has been spreading rumors that you're manipulating Theron using your power to control him. He's going to demand proof that the bond is real, that you haven't corrupted the Alpha King. Sable's blood ran cold. How do I prove that? You could let their healer examine the bond, or you could fight him. Fight an Alpha? I've been a wolf for 6 months. I'd get destroyed. Probably. But you'd earn respect for trying. Sometimes that's worth more than winning. Rowan's expression turned serious. Or you could do what I suspect you're going to do. Something completely unexpected that makes everyone reconsider their assumptions. He walked away before she could ask what he meant. The challenge came an hour into the gathering, exactly as Rowan had predicted. Alpha Marcus stood, his voice carrying across the hall. I move that we demand proof of the bond between Theron and the Silverborn. Evidence that she hasn't used her power to manipulate or control the Alpha King for her own purposes. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Theron stood, fury written across his face. You dare question my bond? My choice of mate? I question whether it was truly your choice, or whether Silverborn compulsion made it for you. The oath prevents. The oath was taken after the bond formed. Who's to say she didn't use her power before swearing it away? Sable felt Theron's rage through their connection, felt him ready to shift, to fight, to tear Marcus apart for the insult. She put her hand on his arm, stopping him. He's right, she said quietly. Sable, not about the manipulation, but about the timing. She stood, addressing the entire hall. The bond formed before I even knew I was Silverborn, before I knew I had any power at all. But you're right, that you only have my word for that. So I'll offer proof. What kind of proof? Marcus demanded. Break it. The hall erupted. Shouts of disbelief, of shock, of anger. Theron grabbed her arm, spinning her to face him. Are you insane? You can't break a mating bond. It would kill you, kill both of us. I'm not talking about severing it permanently. I'm talking about temporarily suppressing it. Silverborn can do that, Kira told me. We can mute the bond for a few hours, make it dormant, prove that what Theron feels for me exists independent of any connection. She looked at Marcus. If I suppress the bond and Theron still chooses me, still claims me as his mate, will that be proof enough? Marcus looked uncertain, like he hadn't expected her to call his bluff. It would be unprecedented. So as a Silverborn queen, we're making new precedent every day. She turned to Theron. Do you trust me? With my life, but not with yours. It's my life to risk. She softened her voice. And if we don't prove this now, this question will follow us forever. Every alliance, every decision, every policy, they'll all wonder if it's really you or if I'm pulling strings. We end it here, or we never end it at all. His jaw worked, fury and fear warring in his eyes. But finally, slowly, he nodded. 3 hours. Not a minute more. Sable turned back to the hall. Get your healers. Witness it. And when he still chooses me, when the bond reforms stronger than before, maybe you'll finally believe that Silverborn aren't the monsters you've been taught to fear. The process was excruciating. It required 3 Silverborn working together, Sable, Kira, and one of the others who had the strongest control. They stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by healers and witnesses, and reached for the bond that connected Sable to Theron. Finding it was easy. It glowed in her mind's eye, golden and strong, thrumming with life. Muting it was like trying to hold water in her fists. Pain lanced through her chest as the bond resisted, fought back, tried to maintain itself. Beside her, Theron gasped, doubling over like he'd been punched. Keep going, Kira urged. It has to be complete, or it won't prove anything. Sable pushed harder, digging deep into the Silverborn power she'd been taught to suppress, using it for the first time with intent and purpose. The bond flickered, dimmed, and finally went dormant. The absence was devastating. One moment she could feel Theron's presence like a second heartbeat, constant and reassuring. The next, there was just nothing. Empty space where he'd been, cold and wrong and terrifying. She looked at him across the circle, saw the same horror in his eyes, the same sense of loss. 3 hours, one of the healers announced. The bond is fully suppressed. We'll monitor for any sign of compulsion or manipulation. Those 3 hours were the longest of Sable's life. Without the bond, she felt unmoored, adrift, like part of her soul had been carved out and set aside. She watched Theron move through the gathering, speaking with other alphas, conducting business, and wondered if he felt the same hollow ache, if he'd realize, without the bond, that she wasn't worth the trouble, that he'd been influenced after all. The thought made her sick. Marcus approached her halfway through, his expression smug. Having doubts, Silverborn? Only about the intelligence of anyone who thinks bonds can be faked. We'll see. 3 hours is a long time to reconsider choices made under compulsion. She wanted to hit him, wanted to shift and show him exactly how much of a threat she could be. Instead, she smiled, cold and sharp. Keep watching. You're going to feel very stupid soon. When the 3 hours ended, Sable and Theron stood in the center of the hall again, surrounded by the same witnesses. The healers had found no evidence of manipulation, no sign of compulsion beyond the normal pull of a mating bond. The suppression will lift in moments, Kira said. The bond will reform on its own. Unless, she looked at Theron, unless the Alpha King chooses to reject it, to refuse the connection. Every eye in the hall turned to Theron. He could do it. Could refuse the bond, claim it had been influence all along, walk away clean. Sable's heart hammered against her ribs. Theron crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, his hands framing her face. I've spent 3 hours, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, feeling like half of me was missing, like I was walking through fog without a compass. The bond didn't make me love you, Sable. It just made it easier to show it. Without it, I still choose you. Every time, I choose you. He kissed her, fierce and claiming, and the bond snapped back into place like a rubber band released. The rush of sensation nearly drove Sable to her knees. Relief, joy, love flooding through the connection so strong it brought tears to her eyes. When they broke apart, the hall was silent. Then Rowan began to clap. Slow, deliberate, approving. Others joined in, the sound building until even Marcus had to admit defeat. His expression sour, but his objection thoroughly demolished. I think, Rowan said into the applause, we can safely say the bond is real, and anyone who questions it from this point forward is a fool. The gathering continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Sable felt it in the way other alphas approached her now, in the questions they asked about the Silverborn, about the oath, about how she'd managed to build a life instead of burning one down. She answered honestly, holding nothing back, and saw understanding begin to replace fear. It wasn't universal. Some still looked at her with suspicion, still saw the prophecy instead of the person, but enough had changed their minds that when the gathering ended, 3 more packs formally requested to take in Silverborn refugees, to give them the same chance Ashvale had given Kira and her people. You're starting something, Theron said that night, holding her close in their temporary chambers. Something that can't be stopped. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know yet. Ask me in 10 years. She laughed despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. Think we'll make it 10 years? I think we'll make it a lifetime. He kissed her temple. You proved today that love can't be faked, that bonds formed in truth can withstand any test. That's more powerful than any Silverborn ability. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm 28. Ancient. He tickled her ribs in retaliation, and they fell into the easy affection that had become their refuge. The bond hummed between them, stronger than before, reinforced by choice rather than fate. A year after the gathering, Sable stood in the healing gardens where Isella had once tried to kill her, watching Cinder train with the younger wolves. He was massive now, nearly as large as Theron, his silver fur gleaming in the afternoon sun. He's gotten good, Kira observed, joining her by the wall. Fastest wolf I've ever seen. He takes after his father. Fenrir was legendary. So is his uncle. Kira glanced at her. Have you told him yet? Told him what? Don't play dumb. I can smell it on you. You're pregnant. Sable's hand went to her stomach instinctively, protective. 3 months. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Theron's going to lose his mind. Theron's going to try to wrap me in wool and forbid me from doing anything more strenuous than sitting in a chair. Probably accurate, Kira grinned. A Silverborn heir. That's going to make the other packs nervous. Everything makes the other packs nervous? They'll adapt. Sable watched Cinder pin one of his training partners, gentle despite his size. Besides, if this child is anything like that pup, they'll spend more time getting into trouble than conquering anything. Here's hoping. That night, Sable told Theron. His reaction was exactly what she'd predicted. Shock, joy, terror, and an immediate instinct to protect her from everything, including herself. You need to rest more. No more patrols, no more… Theron. Council meetings if they get too heated, and definitely no… Theron. Shifting unless absolutely necessary, and we should probably… She kissed him to shut him up and felt his panic melt into wonder. We're having a child, he whispered against her lips. We are. A child who'll be silverborn in royal blood, who'll bridge both worlds like you do. A child who'll make their own choices, follow their own path. She placed his hand on her stomach. Just like we did. I'm terrified. Good. So am I. Means we're doing it right. They held each other in the darkness, the bond singing between them, and Sable thought about how far she'd come from the invisible healer's apprentice, who'd run into a fire on instinct. She'd lost her anonymity, her safety, her simple life. But she'd gained a mate, a family, a purpose that went beyond survival, and a future that was hers to shape, prophecy be damned. The child was born 7 months later, in the same healing chambers where Sable had first woken after the fire. The labor was hard, longer than anyone wanted, but when the baby finally arrived, screaming and furious and perfect, Sable understood what her mother had felt, the desperate need to protect, to give this child every chance, every choice, to let them be more than their bloodline demanded. A girl, Lyra announced, placing the baby in Sable's arms. Healthy, strong, and by the sound of those lungs, already opinionated. Theron knelt beside the bed, his eyes glassy as he looked at his daughter. She's perfect. She's screaming. Perfect and screaming. He touched the baby's tiny hand, marveled when she gripped his finger. What should we name her? Sable looked down at the child in her arms. Silver hair, just like Cinder. Amber eyes that would probably shift to gray or gold as she grew. Silverborn in royal blood, bound to a future no one could predict. Alara, Sable said, after my mother, after the woman who tried to give me a choice, even when fate had other plans. Alara. Theron tested the name, smiled. It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect. I'm exhausted and covered in sweat. I'm objectively a mess right now. Perfectly messy then, Sable laughed, the sound bubbling up despite the exhaustion, despite everything. And looking at Theron, at their daughter, at the life they'd built from ashes and prophecy and sheer stubborn will, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate hope of survival, but the strong, solid hope of knowing you'd survived, you'd won, you'd made something beautiful out of wreckage, that you'd looked at a prophecy that said you'd unite or destroy and chose a third option, live. Just live, fully and messily and imperfectly, and let that be enough. The Northern Alliance gathered for Alara's naming ceremony when she was 6 months old. It had become tradition, this yearly gathering, a chance for the Pax to see that Sable hadn't burned the world down, hadn't manipulated Theron, hadn't become the monster they'd feared. Instead, she'd become something none of them had expected. A queen who healed instead of conquered, who built alliances through understanding rather than force, who proved that Silverborn could be trusted. Rowan held Alara during the ceremony, his weathered face gentle as he blessed the child in the old language. When he returned her to Sable's arms, he whispered, Your mother would be proud. Of you, of this little one, of everything you've built. I hope so. I know so. He stepped back, addressing the gathered Pax. This child represents the future. A future where bloodlines don't determine worth, where power is used to protect rather than oppress. A future we build together or not at all. It wasn't universal acceptance, would never be universal acceptance, but it was enough. That night, Sable stood on the battlements with Alara sleeping against her shoulder, Theron at her side, Cinder dozing at their feet. The mountains stretched before them, dark and vast and unforgiving, but also beautiful, also home. Do you think she'll hate us? Sable asked quietly. For the choices we made, the responsibilities we've put on her shoulders? I think she'll make her own choices, fight her own battles, build her own life. Theron wrapped his arm around her waist, just like we did. What if the prophecy doesn't own her any more than it owned you? Whatever she becomes, whoever she chooses to be, we'll support her, love her, give her the choice your mother tried to give you. Sable looked down at her sleeping daughter, at the silver hair and peaceful face, and made a promise. This child would know what she was from the beginning, would be taught to control her power, to understand it, to use it wisely. But she would also know that she was more than her bloodline, more than any prophecy. She would be Alara, just Alara, and that would be enough. I love you, Sable whispered to Theron, the words carrying weight and history and futures yet unwritten. I love you too. He kissed her temple. My queen, my mate, my silverborn. Below them, Ashvale glowed with torchlight and life. The castle that had once felt like a cage now felt like home. The pack that had once feared her now looked to her for guidance. And Sable, who had spent 8 years trying to be invisible, stood in plain sight at the center of it all. Not hiding, not running, not just surviving, living. Finally, completely, messily, beautifully living. The fire that should have killed her had led her here. The prophecy that should have destroyed her had freed her. The bond that should have been impossible had saved her. And standing on the battlements with her family, Sable looked at the future and smiled. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And that made all the difference.